Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host. The y'all mean of revolution. The end is near. North Korea sends Iran the weapons to hit America. I warned y'all about this. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Y'all, where the red light is flashing, the maniac Trump is going to get everybody killed. Let's get into the content. Salute.
The Middle Eastern chessboard has just experienced what can only be described as a seismic and terrifying shift. One that has left Donald Trump's war cabinet scrambling and the Pentagon trapped in a strategic quagmire they never saw coming. For weeks, the world has watched the horrifying spectacle of the U.S.-Israeli war machine trying to batter the Islamic Republic of Iran into submission, believing that superior technology and overwhelming firepower would pave the way to victory in the skies over Tehran and the strategic waters of the Persian Gulf. But behind the smoke and the headlines, a far more dangerous game was being played.
According to leading security expert Bruce Bechtold, Iran's deadly missile arsenal has deep roots in its long-standing partnership with North Korea.
Guess who has stepped in to support Iran? It's Kim Jong-un. According to local reports, the North Korean dictator has said that if Iran were to request military assistance, his country would be prepared to provide missiles against Israel.
Intelligence agencies in South Korea and military analysts across the globe are now sounding the alarm. North Korea has secretly entered the war. It is no longer just about the decades-old pipeline of missile components or shared technical know-how. According to a flurry of reports from South Korea's National Intelligence Service, and corroborated by whispers from Western intelligence, Pyongyang has used a covert network of oil tankers masquerading as commercial vessels to ship not just standard ballistic missiles, but a stockpile of genuine intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, to Iran, including the fearsome Hwasong-18 solid-fuel ICBMs. Rumors are now circulating that these deliveries, estimated by some analysts to be as many as 500 missiles, are the real, hidden reason why Tehran has so brazenly refused Trump's ultimatum to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran knows something the White House tried to hide. And that secret nuclear-armed North Korean technicians and military advisors have also landed in Tehran, tasked with advising their Iranian counterparts on how to respond with nuclear-tipped warheads if Israel dares to cross the nuclear threshold. The war in Iran is no longer a regional conflict. It is a global axis of resistance counteroffensive, and Kim Jong-un is now the wild card holding the detonator. The implications are nothing short of apocalyptic. What we are witnessing is not just an alliance of convenience, but the emergence of a hardened, battle-tested military bloc. Observers are now openly speculating that Kim Jong-un is using Iran's desperate fight against the US and Israel as a live fire testing ground for his most lethal toys. This is a nightmare scenario for the Pentagon. The same adversary that threatens to turn Seoul into a sea of fire is now offering up its latest intercontinental ballistic missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, and even advanced drone technology to be field tested against the very same F-35s, B-52 bombers, and naval battle groups that could one day be used against Pyongyang. The reports emerging from the front lines in the past 72 hours are nothing short of shocking. While the Pentagon has been spinning a narrative of surgical strikes and degraded Iranian air defenses, the reality on the ground paints a picture of catastrophic failure for the U.S. Air Force. 7 American jets are now lying as wreckage across Iranian territory. And in a development that has terrified the generals in the Pentagon, a joint Iranian-North Korean air defense system, rumored to be a hybrid of Iran's indigenous Third of Khordad and North Korea's deadly KN-06, Pangay-5, is being credited with the sudden, devastating ability to swat U.S. and Israeli fighter jets out of the sky. It appears the axis of resistance has just gotten a major upgrade. So, if you are tired of the mainstream media covering up these massive American and Israeli battlefield losses, and you want the unvarnished truth about how the tables are turning, hit that like button right now. Share this video with every patriot and truth seeker you know. Drop a comment below, even if it's just a single dot to help crush the algorithm, and subscribe to this channel because honest anti-war journalism is more dangerous now than ever, and we need your support to keep exposing the truth. Let's dive straight into the guts of this betrayal that has blindsided the White House. For months, Donald Trump believed he had successfully pressured Kim Jong-un into staying on the sidelines. But as the saying goes, in geopolitics, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. According to leaked assessments from South Korean intelligence briefings held behind closed doors with lawmakers, the North has masterfully exploited a network of covert oil tankers to bypass U.S. naval patrols in the region. These aren't just rust buckets carrying crude, they are Trojan horses. Under the guise of delivering sanctioned oil to circumvent American embargoes, these vessels are instead unloading heavy ballistic missiles and, most terrifyingly, North Korean military engineers directly onto the shores of the Persian Gulf. This explains the sudden, baffling resilience of the Iranian missile campaign. But the big picture here goes beyond just hardware. Why would Kim risk open confrontation with the American superpower at a time when Trump is dangling the prospect of future talks and economic relief? The answer is cold, hard reality testing. For Kim, the Iranian battlefield is the ultimate laboratory. He is watching the telemetry data of how his Hwasong missiles perform against Israeli Arrow and U.S. Patriot defense systems. He is studying how the KN-06 air defense radar locks onto stealth aircraft. He is gauging how American psychological operations and decapitation strikes, like the ones that assassinated Iranian military leaders, affect command and control. By bleeding the Americans in Iran, Kim is stress testing his own war plans for the Korean Peninsula, learning exactly what works and what fails against the U.S. war machine without risking a single North Korean uniform on the front lines yet. Let's talk about the weapon that has truly changed the war, the air defense system that the Iranians are now calling a game changer. For the first 48 hours of the conflict, the narrative was entirely dictated by Washington. We were told Iranian air defenses were crumbling, that the mullahs had lost control of their skies, but then something strange happened. The loss of U.S. aircraft began to accelerate. First, an F-35 Lightning II, the crown jewel of the American fleet, went down. Then, in the span of just 48 hours, reports from Iranian military sources and international outlets like the Hindustan Times confirmed the loss of multiple A-10 Warthogs and F-15E Strike Eagles, with dozens of aircrew listed as wounded or missing. What happened? According to intelligence experts and open-source analysts, the Iranian military quietly integrated the North Korean KN-06 surface-to-air missile system into their integrated air defense network. The KN-06, known as Pangé 5 or Lightning 5, is North Korea's premier long-range air defense asset, a sophisticated system that bears an uncanny resemblance to the Russian S-300 and the Chinese FT-2000. Unlike the older legacy systems Iran possessed, the KN-06 is equipped with a modern phased array radar designed specifically to track and engage smaller, fast-moving targets, precisely the type of cruise missiles and standoff munitions the U.S. relies on. But the secret weapon isn't just the radar, it's the tactics. American pilots are trained to fight the Russian S-300. They have studied its frequencies, its engagement envelopes, and its electronic warfare weaknesses. They have never fought a North Korean variant operated by Iranian crews who are ready to die for their country. This hybrid system, which some Iranian military spokespersons have cryptically hinted at, appears to be able to fire and forget, using advanced electronic countermeasures that have rendered American jamming pods far less effective. Furthermore, Tehran has been deceiving the world. While the Pentagon was proudly boasting of hitting launchers and radar vans, the Iranians, with North Korean engineering advice, had already built a mobile resilient network. They have not only deployed the KN-06, but have apparently integrated it with their locally produced Bavar 373 systems to create a mesh network. This means that if the US destroys one radar, another immediately picks up the slack. The result has been a terrifying no-fly zone over key strategic areas, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz. For the first time since the Gulf War, a non-nuclear US adversary is effectively contesting the skies, and they are doing it with a helping hand from the Hermit Kingdom. This brings us to the $64,000 question. If the situation is this dire, why can't Trump buy Kim off? Reports are flooding in that the White House is using back channels, desperate, frantic back channels, to convince Kim to pull his technicians and halt the missile shipments. Trump is reportedly dangling the promise of recognition, sanctions relief, and even a security guarantee. But here is the brutal historical lesson that the White House refuses to learn, and it is why their attempts at pacification will fail catastrophically. Kim Jong-un is not Muammar Gaddafi. He is not Saddam Hussein. He watched the U.S. intervention in Venezuela, where diplomatic pressure and economic strangulation nearly brought down a sovereign government. But more importantly, he watched what happened to Libya. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program in exchange for a handshake from the West. A few years later, he was dragged out of a drainage pipe and lynched by US-backed militants. That image is seared into the psyche of every leader in Pyongyang. For Kim, the war in Iran is the ultimate justification for his nuclear arsenal. He sees that even without nuclear weapons, Iran is surviving, bleeding the Americans, downing their jets, and holding the global economy hostage. He sees that the only reason the U.S. hasn't already launched a Venezuela-style decapitation operation against him is because he has the bomb. Trump can promise him the world, but Kim knows that American foreign policy is driven by regime change. The United States views North Korea as an existential threat, a rogue state that must be dismantled. Trump's attempts to play nice are viewed with deep suspicion in Pyongyang. They know that the U.S. military has contingency plans for striking the North. They know that the minute Iran is defeated, the Pentagon will turn its full attention back to the Pacific. Therefore, the only logical strategy for Kim is to ensure Iran is not defeated. By arming Iran to the teeth and testing his weapons in real time, he is creating a quagmire for the U.S. He is draining their missile stockpiles, exhausting their pilots, and bleeding their treasury. And lurking behind the entire North Korean-Iranian nexus is the silent, calculating hand of Beijing. While the Western media focuses on the missiles and the mayhem, China is playing the longest game of all. Beijing has publicly called for restraint, but behind the scenes, it is facilitating the oppo of goods and, crucially, the flow of finance. It is no coincidence that just as the war escalates, reports from the Strait of Hormuz indicate that Iran is now accepting payment for oil transit in Chinese yuan. Let me repeat that. The Strait of Hormuz, the most important energy choke point in the world, is being weaponized, not just with mines and missiles, but with currency. By forcing tankers to settle fees in yuan Iran, with China's quiet approval, is driving a dagger into the heart of the US petrodollar system. This is the real reason China is so invested in ensuring Iran stands firm. They don't care about the Shiite crescent or the Palestinian cause. They care about de-dollarization. Every day the strait is closed or restricted, the global economy suffers, and every day it suffers, the allure of the dollar as a safe haven diminishes. China is using the war to accelerate the shift to a multipolar currency world, and they are using North Korea as their attack dog to keep the pressure on. The situation has become so desperate that intelligence reports are now suggesting that in the event of a full-scale U.S. ground offensive to seize the Iranian islands in the Strait of Hormuz, North Korea is prepared to deploy troops. We have seen this playbook before. In Ukraine, Pyongyang provided engineering units and military advisors to Russia, keeping their hands...
I already told y'all this. I told y'all this weeks ago. North Korea already sent the missiles. Same thing they did with Russia. Sent Russia the missiles to test in the Ukraine war, to ally themselves with Russia. As soon as Ukraine invaded Russia, North Korea sent troops into Russia to help Russia fight the Ukrainian NATO invaders. Same thing with Iran. North Korea has sent the missiles. And I said this, if the U.S. makes the stupid idea to invade Iran and put boots on the ground, North Korea going to do the same.
It's dirty while maintaining plausible
North Korea
deniability.
want to fight NATO.
There are already fears creeping through the border regions of North Korea, with reports from Iran International noting that families of military-age men are increasingly worried about overseas deployment to the Middle East. As we move into the coming days, expect the situation to get far worse before it gets any better. Trump's ultimatums are hollow. Iran is standing tall because they know they are not alone. They are armed with the latest tech from a regime that has nothing to lose. The skies over the Persian Gulf have become a shooting gallery for North Korean missiles, and the American military is the target. We will continue to follow this story as it unfolds, tracking the wreckage of American imperialism as it crashes back down to earth. Stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, never believe the official narrative.
Are you researching dental implants?
There's a lot of dental offices that'll talk about doing their teeth in a day process. A lot of times what they
leaving anything to chance. Iran is very calculated. Iran knows what it's doing. Iran is preparing for a potential attack that would include a ground invasion. So what are they going to do in that regard exactly if the United States decides to have a ground operation? Whether it is limited to get the uranium or if it's strategic to do with the Khark Island or oil assets or a bigger invasion. Should they be insane to that level? Because if we want to talk about insanity, it's there. You know, they're blessed with a lot of insanity. Attacking Iran was an insane move. Why shouldn't they continue? Like what Israel did in Gaza. And the American army is no less evil and genocidal than the Israeli army. That's a known fact, proven by its history. Iran is preparing heavily with the following. The Interior Minister of Iran said that 12 million citizens declared their readiness to fight to repel any ground invasion during a 10-day mobilization campaign. So Iran officially, its armed forces is approximately what? 500,000 to 700,000, you know, with additional reserves and forces, maybe 1 to 2 million. 12 million, more than 10% of the Iranian population, would be able to or has showed willingness to participate in any sort of mobilization that the United States would have. Would they stand a chance against that? You saw the hunt. You saw the hunt that came from the tribes in Iran when they wanted to have an opportunity to catch the pilot, right? Imagine there is a ground invasion and every Iranian just throws a stone, by the way, at an American invader. What would happen to them? Iran is prepared for the worst case scenario with the United States, and they're preparing very heavily. The fact that Trump is entertaining this idea is beyond madness, and it shows how detached he is from reality, how much he doesn't pay any attention and doesn't really care about what anyone says. Now, that's coming with more criticism, again, coming from within the United States about the situation as a whole, and the fact that the United States is going to have to withdraw eventually. There is no winning with Iran. The United States isn't capable of winning with Iran. They're too arrogant to accept that fact, like the Israelis were too arrogant to accept the fact that the Palestinian resistance will never be defeated, because their resistance exists based on an aggression, an act of injustice. The best way to remove resistance is to remove the injustice. Otherwise, it's a symptom. Don't talk to me about the side effects. Talk to me about the disease itself and the problem. Trying to coat it and being too arrogant about it will lead to your demise. And that's what the United States and Israel are leading themselves into. But in the United States, they're also worried about the after effects. Trump may repeat the withdrawal scenario and leave the region in a dangerous chaos. They did that before. They did it with Vietnam. They did it with Iraq. They did it with Afghanistan. And now they are most likely to do it with Iran. Why? Because Iran isn't even comparable to all of the other situations and wars that the United States has been in. We're talking about a much bigger scale. And Trump, if he doesn't want to lead to a very large massacre of American forces in Iran, will have to withdraw and declare victory. Just declare we achieved the objectives. They're already doing that, aren't they? Let's not forget. We defeated the army. We annihilated their navy. 82% of the launches are gone. We have enough oil. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz. All of these statements are a preparation. We have a regime change. There's a new regime. Why is all of that? When it's completely the opposite of what's happening on the ground. It's because they are preparing. They're preparing the public for a declaration of victory, a victory over Iran. When every American base in West Asia has been wiped off the map, when the United States is out of West Asia, when the genocidal satanic death cult state is in its most vulnerable situation, and that's it. And say that we won. We won, but the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is controlling it, because there's a new regime, right? And they're friendly. They have it calculated. There's a new regime because they're so good, because Mujtaba Khamenei is an amazing guy, my type of guy, me and the Ayatollah. And let him get the money, and we want what's best for the Iranian people at the end of the day. And they'll leave. Americans dead. Does he care? Does anyone think he cares? Losses, does anyone think he cares? Do you know what? Forget about the people for a second, right? Companies, Mr. Business and Mr. Assets and Mr. Property. What did he do to American companies exactly? How many assets of American companies have been attacked so far? So far. We haven't even continued the game. Is he good for American business? So he's not even good for the elite, as in he's not even good for the corporations. The elite depends on how you define them, The Zionist elite there, yeah. He's not good for American business. He's not good for American corporations. He's definitely not good for the average American, let alone the most vulnerable in American society. Nothing whatsoever. And he prioritizes this because he's a blackmailed Epstein top-tier participant, child trafficking, pedophilia. He prefers that over the American people. So he may well do that eventually, because that is the only way out. There is no other way out. The United States will have to surrender. And trust me, it's a huge embarrassment. They're going to have to. And spin it. Declare victory. Right now, misinformation spreads faster than facts, especially on the most sensitive.
Regions dating back
888-404-6312.
We also want to tell you about our friends over at Ethos. What, do you want me to wait to do that? That was the plan. That's right. This Planet Lab says that they have received a request from the U.S. to black out all images in and around Iran and surrounding regions dating back to March 6th at least, and possibly before the war. They're saying they have to comply, and other satellite companies are reporting that the U.S. is threatening sanctions if they don't. Why would they do that? Why would they not want us to access satellite imagery, do you think? So how can we know what to believe? Joining us to discuss is Colonel Douglas McGregor. He can tell us what he thinks of all of this. So first, let's start with the nuke. Do you think that's what that means? Is that the only way to wipe out an entire country in one day? Does that horrify you?
Well, the possibility of a nuclear weapon always horrifies me. I think there are some other ways that can be employed that could certainly disrupt power inside the country. Quote unquote, taking out the entire country sounds to me to be a little hyperbolic. And, you know, Trump is famous for hyperbolic statements. He's the born marketer. He stands up and grossly exaggerates everything out of proportion to reality. So my assumption is that he's not talking about a nuclear weapon. If he does, well, I think George Kennan said it best. He said that a nuclear weapon was a suicidal device because there was no rational application for it. Even Stalin said that it had no real military utility because it destroyed everything. It was only useful insofar as you could protect your territorial integrity with it. So I hope that that's not what he's talking about. I think it's probably conventional. And there are some innovative ways to disrupt power and essentially black out the entire country. Is that a permanent condition? No. Is it going to win the war? No, absolutely not. And I think that's the problem. And you were talking about censorship. Well, if you're winning and things are going well, you don't usually need censorship, do you?
No.
Exactly.
Well, the president released I think, pretty nice, jovial Easter message on Truth Social.
It was inspiring, really.
It was really inspiring. Like when the kids were, doing their Easter egg hunt, like, let's gather around and read the president's message because it was really inspiring. He said Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. So obviously, I'm joking about that being a warm Easter message, but open the strait. Then Iran responds that they've lost the keys. We're not going to be able to open the Strait of Hormuz. Sorry, we've lost the keys to that in response. What do you think happens militarily next about the Strait of Hormuz?
Militarily, I think he's going to do exactly what he says, and the Air Force will go in along with Naval Air, and they will deliver a punishing series of strikes designed to destroy petrochemical plants, energy infrastructure, and anything that provides power and support to the government. There's no question about that. Again, will it be successful? I don't think it's going to make much difference. You're talking about a continental power. We're a maritime and aerospace power. That's why we don't maintain a large army. We don't need to. We have oceans around us. Iran is a continental power. That's why it has 1 million men under arms inside the country. That's why it's invested heavily in this ISR strike paradigm, which is to link satellites and space-based intelligence and surveillance collection to strike systems. What they will do after Trump completes his mission on Tuesday night or whenever he decides to start it, you got to take these deadlines with a grain of salt. He's not always completely honest about that. And what you may get is something earlier, who knows? But if it happens, the Iranians are going to respond. And they've already said what they will do. And I find that far more upsetting than anything we're going to do, because they're going to destroy everything of a similar quality in terms of energy infrastructure and power plants, and potentially, I don't know if we hit the desalination plants or not, but if we rob the country of power, I suppose desalination won't work anyway. But the Iranians can turn around and do that to the entire western coast of the Persian Gulf. And I think that will finish off the Gulf states. They have almost 67 million people living in that region that runs from Oman all the way up to Kuwait and southern Iraq, they won't be able to sustain themselves. They won't be able to drink water. They won't have any power. Now, I don't know how many are still there, but I think that's kind of a death sentence for those Gulf states and probably also Saudi Arabia, which is why I think they have been pleading with President Trump to do something else, to begin thinking differently. But this is something I wanted to add today that I think is very important. We need to understand that Israel's demand for this thing called Greater Israel, for more territory in Lebanon and Syria, ultimately Iraq, even at the expense of Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the Sinai and part of Egypt beyond the Nile, all of this forbids a Palestinian state, and it makes compromise with Iran, with any of the Muslim countries in the region, impossible. And ultimately, that's what we're fighting for, because the whole purpose of our war is to essentially achieve Israeli goals. We have no territorial aims in the region. Our only interest historically was really in the oil and the 47 products around the world that oil produces, that petroleum is part of. But we have no interest in the territory there. But we're being asked to underwrite that expansion. And at the same time, we're being asked to make the region submissive to Israel. In other words, to subordinate everyone there to whatever Israel wants. I don't see that happening. I don't think the populations of the region will go along with that. I don't think they ever will go along with it. And I don't think the military is the right instrument to help Israel improve its position in the region. So everything that you're hearing right now is essentially a verdict on Israel and its destruction. It makes Israel's failure inevitable. There is no chance for them to achieve what they want. We can't make it happen. We don't have the military power to do it. We can't open that strait. That's the whole problem. Can't be done.
Something the president said in his press conference today was, I tore up Barack Obama's Iranian nuclear deal because it disfavored Israel. Obama was choosing Iran over Israel. And why would you do that? I mean, I would do that at this point because Iran has not instigated a genocide before our very eyes in the last. So, that curries favorably.
Well, your point is accurate. They've killed an awful lot of human beings. They've driven them from their homes.
And that's so what he said is, I had to choose Israel. I had to rejigger all of my politics, which led to this major conflict in the Middle East, because I needed to center Israel as a priority. I don't think there's any other way to see it, is there?
No, and I think he's put the global economic community on the road to a depression. It's only a matter of time until this depression strikes. Everybody thinks exclusively in terms of gasoline, but it's gasoline, it's diesel, it's plastics, it's fertilizer, it's feedstocks. I mean, we just go down the list. All of these things are missing in the global South, and the global South is in enormous trouble. So is Japan. Japan is trying to put all of its nuclear reactors back online. They have a lot of work ahead of them, but they're doing it. And at the same time, they're burning whatever coal they can buy from wherever they can get it. The same thing is happening in Korea. All of these states that we're talking about, whether it's Korea, Japan, India, most of Southeast Asia, most of Africa, these states are not our enemies. Most of these states have good relations with us. We are harming our friends, and we're sending them all simultaneously to the poorhouse. Now, that also affects us. I mean, President Trump doesn't seem to understand that oil is a global commodity. So when the price rises in one place, it rises in other places. We're seeing it rise here. Right now in Germany, they're paying the equivalent of about $11 per gallon for gasoline. That's actually going to go up. The situation in Europe is dire, and people are now bidding for oil. So the tankers that might otherwise go to Europe that would ameliorate these conditions, they're not arriving because the Japanese, the Koreans, Indians, others can offer more money than the Europeans can for the energy. So the whole energy system in the world is being disrupted, and ultimately is going to have to be rebuilt, and it's going to take a decade or more. None of this seems to sink in. I think until the stock market crashes, and I think that it will, I don't know if it'll happen in 3 weeks or 3 months, but it's definitely going to tank. It's going to tank because Wall Street's going to.
I think we lost his audio.
Oh, are we still live?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, there he is. Yeah, he's still talking. It's just the audio.
Colonel, Colonel's signal is kind of going in and out. Panic buying is going to become a reality. You're going to see, to your point about fertilizer shortages, all of these things. It's not just about gasoline prices. It's the wider spread. You're seeing across the board, all through Southeast Asia right now. So how long until that starts trickling into Europe and into the United States?
Well, I think Europe is already crumbling. Germany in particular is just in the worst imaginable possible position. They've already been through this long process of deindustrialization because Biden decided to destroy the pipeline that brought them cheap energy from Russia. They can't do business anymore with Russia. Now they're dependent on external sources, and the pipelines that are reaching north are going to be cut off by the Iranians. What do you think happens when the Houthis finally cut off access to the Red Sea? All of this is going to combine to essentially bring the global economy to a halt. And as that begins to develop in a dramatic way and hits us here at home as well, I think President Trump's war is going to be ended involuntarily, ultimately. But he's going to be in a lot of trouble. If he continues on this route, I think he's going to be a potential victim of the 25th Amendment.
Well, questions swirling about whether or not he's even in his right frame of mind. Obviously, you've served under him. I've interviewed him, dozens and dozens of times. He seems like a completely different person than the person that I used to interview on a regular basis. There's concerns that he has dementia. He's been, rumors about him being rushed to the hospital the other day. Alex Jones talking about his swelled up ankles, meaning that he's got some sort of a heart failure. Who knows? This kind of stuff spirals out of control, but you agree that something seems off?
Yeah, this is not the man that I knew in 2020 when I had the opportunity to sit and talk with him. He was a very different person. He was much more relaxed. I would describe him as being very much in control of his faculties. And when I listen to him now, it's not the same person. So I think there are serious problems. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose it. But my point is that he's on a very dangerous glide path into hell. Let's put it that way. These statements that come out in the middle of the night, like the last one on Easter, signal that there's a certain unbalanced quality about the man that has to be addressed. People on the Hill are noticing it. We just had Senator Curtis, a Republican, who finally said, we should not continue with this war beyond 60 days unless we get a declaration of war. Well, hallelujah. He's absolutely right. It's a little late, I would argue, but thank God somebody's brought it up. Instead of attacking President Trump personally, which I think is a waste of time, people should stand up with Curtis, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and make the same point. We're spending a lot of money over there. We're not getting much for our investment, in my judgment. So I think we need to bring this to a close somehow. Unfortunately, as I said before, we're committed to Israel's aims, and the Israelis have proven very resistant to any form of compromise.
I want to take your pulse of this. We see these stories about like the doomsday planes. You see it with Netanyahu, and then nothing comes of it. Then you see this story here from the Daily Mail, just posted a few moments ago. Trump's doomsday plane spotted circling U.S. War Command Center as Iran rejects ceasefire. His emergency command aircraft currently circling above a U.S. base home to America's nuclear command center. The Night Watch Boeing E-4B made several loops above the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska today. What do you make of this? Anything to make of this or nothing?
I hope not much, but it could be that the decision was made to do it at this point in order to send signals that they think are somehow or another going to intimidate the Iranians or anybody else. This sort of thing doesn't work. It never has. We have threatened so many people so often under President Trump. Every time he opens his mouth, he insults someone somewhere in a position of authority around the world. We've gotten to the point now where I think the answer to President Trump is going to be more resistance, more hostility, a greater readiness to fight. So I think, in addition to what I mentioned earlier on Tuesday, I think you will see the use of some ground forces in the Persian Gulf. And I think that will be done on the assumption that this is somehow or another going to pry loose the Gulf, but it can't, because you don't have to sit right in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz in order to stop things from moving through it. All you have to do is make it abundantly clear that you have tactical ballistic missiles and drones that can destroy anything that tries to move through it. And that can be done. And unless you can root out all of the strike systems within a few hundred miles inside Iran, unless you can stop or disrupt the communication between the satellites which provide the targeting data for the strike systems, nothing is going to change. And no one in their right mind is going to underwrite the shipping with insurance. So I don't know why he thinks that this can be done militarily, because I just don't see it working.
Something that Dan Davis has said on our show is that a nuclear weapon in Iran will be a nuclear weapon that affects Israel too. What do you think of that? Is there a precision nuke that I don't know about?
Well, nuclear warheads can be just as precise as conventional warheads, only at the detonation end, infinitely more destructive with long-term effects. And we know what those are. You can poison the atmosphere, poison the ground. You can set up people to die from all sorts of cancer for years afterwards. So that's the difference, and that's why we don't want anything to do with nuclear weapons. You end up destroying everything. There's no real strategic benefit to it unless your goal is to murder. And you see, this is why, frankly, I don't believe that President Trump would employ such a weapon, or anybody in the United States would do so, because I don't think our aim is to murder 1 million people in Iran. On the other hand, I do worry about Israel. All we have to do is listen to the things that they've said and see what they have done in various places. And they have unhesitantly murdered large numbers of people that they wanted to be rid of. So I do worry about the Israelis, and I don't see any evidence that we have any real influence over them. I only see influence going in one direction, from them to President Trump and his advisors.
I just want to come back to your military depth of knowledge and what this, when we look at ground troops, we look at, seems like the massive mobilization across the board here, multiple aircraft carriers now in this space. Maybe you could sort of game out what we're seeing and how you think this might unfold maybe over the next few days, Colonel.
Well, if you have, as they do right now in the Gulf, persistent surveillance, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, anywhere from 600 to 1,200 miles from Iran. In other words, just draw a circle, and you go out from Iran's borders 600 to 1,000 miles. That means that you can see everything that is there. Potentially, given the weapons they have, their missile technology, that means that if you're American forces, whether you are at sea, in the air, on the ground at an airstrip or an airfield, or you are soldiers or Marines trying to move into the Persian Gulf, whether you fly in or however they manage to insert them, you are operating in a killing zone. That's what has to be understood. It's one giant killing zone.
And can you be specific?
All they have to do is look at the screen and find you, and you're done.
And before you go on, in that killing zone, what type of weapons does Iran still have access to? Are we talking hypersonics and others that they would be in that killing zone?
Oh, absolutely. You have tactical and you have theater ballistic missiles. An intercontinental ballistic missile does not exist in the Iranian inventory, contrary to what people are saying, nor do I think we're going to see one anytime soon. But certainly theater ballistic missiles that can fly 1,000 to 1,500 miles Yes, they exist, and they are precise, and they can be hypersonic. They can be unstoppable, but they can do the same thing with drones, albeit the drones will be slower, cheaper, but in far greater numbers, which is what we've seen repeatedly. And we have turned out to be very, very ineffective in our efforts to shoot these things down or stop them. That's the problem. And increasingly, Israel is almost defenseless. I don't know what their missile status is with regard to our weapons, the THAAD missiles or theater high altitude air defense missiles, PAC-3s or GEM-Ts or whatever they've got. But I don't think they have enough to cope with the Iranian threat. And the Iranians have proven and demonstrated repeatedly they'll penetrate, they'll get through, and they'll kill you. So my point is, how many Marines and how many soldiers can you airlift into the Persian Gulf area? Say you try to put them into UAE, you try to put them into Kuwait, you try to put them into Qatar, wherever you try to go, they're going to be identified. And then you have to move them from wherever you stage them to the islands that you're trying to seize in the Gulf. Now, I hope that somebody somewhere, and I'm sure somebody has, in the military has pointed this out. And you can't guarantee that they'll get through without being killed before they even arrive at their target destination. That's the problem.
I want to ask you, in a minute, we're going to talk to Scott Ritter about the rescue mission over the weekend. The White House held an hour-long press conference today with Trump and other military leaders, including the CIA. I was confused why they were there. I want to ask you, what is the use value of doing something like that, a victory lapping a mission such as this? Because this may seem abundantly obvious, but you don't have to rescue people if you don't start wars. So why do you think they're doing this?
Well, remember, we go after pilots with a vengeance because you're asking pilots to potentially fly into enemy airspace. And if you expect them to do that, they have to have some assurance that if they're shot down, you will try to rescue them. In other words, we don't send pilots on suicide missions, say, good luck, may never see you again, hope you get through. No, we tell them, look, well, you do the best you can. We'll give you all the support we possibly can. And if we were able to do so, we will definitely extricate you. And we don't leave people behind unless we can absolutely not avoid it. So I think that's important. On the other hand, Scott may be able to tell you more than I can about the details of the special operations mission on the ground in Iran, which I think was aimed at trying to secure enriched uranium. Now, that would involve the CIA. You can't do any of that without the Central Intelligence Agency. The expertise for that sort of thing is there, and their ability to identify it, contain it, and remove it would have to be part of the mission. Yeah, obviously, it does not seem to have worked. Now, how many people were injured or killed, I have no idea. And again, we're back to what you were talking about at the beginning. We're not going to broadcast that. From the wreckage that we have been able to see, and I don't know if that's all the wreckage or just some of it. I haven't seen very many remains or corpses or anything, thank God. Were they removed by the Iranians? I don't know. But obviously it didn't work. And I think there were a lot of people in the Pentagon who made the point that this was the proverbial needle in the haystack. And the chances for success of that mission were always very low. So I think the president is probably going to turn his attention now to the other kinds of missions we discussed earlier. But we'll see.
Doug, before we let you go, I want to just get an assessment of what's happening inside of Tel Aviv, what's happening inside of Israel, and the attacks. We see videos that then have been later confirmed, and yes, we see neighborhoods on fire, but it's very difficult, as you know, to get information out of Israel. And those sources who are sort of speaking, well, it's almost like it reminds me of the Leslie Nielsen from Naked Gun. He's standing there literally on the phone with, so you can hear missiles going off in the background. It's all fine, nothing to see here, and you can hear like explosions in the background. First, on the Israel side, how are things looking there? What is Iran's ability to penetrate the Iron Dome, the other systems, and then also the Lebanon piece of this and the destruction of neighborhoods across southern Lebanon? So maybe you could just unpack both of those pieces and where things stand there.
Well, starting with southern Lebanon, it's pretty obvious that the effort in southern Lebanon is to Gazify it, to essentially repeat in southern Lebanon what they've done in Gaza. There's also evidence that there's an interest in doing some of that on the West Bank, although it's not as intensive. The bottom line is that they thought, or at least they insisted, that Hezbollah had been put out of action. Hezbollah is absolutely not out of action. And Hezbollah has managed to launch a lot of rockets into northern Israel. Especially the people in northern Israel are very unhappy. They've made that abundantly clear politically. Many of them have been evacuated. Lots of Israelis have left. Now, where have they gone? I'm told Cyprus, Greek islands, even all the way to Serbia in some cases and elsewhere. I think Israel is on the knife edge of serious internal disruption. Their government is suppressing dissent. It has to right now. I think Mr. Netanyahu, and I don't know where he is, I have absolutely no idea where he is, but I think he and his government are hard pressed to hold things together. I don't think the Iron Dome is very effective anymore. I don't know how effective it was to begin with. It was never as advertised. And as we were talking earlier, how many missiles have they got? Anti-missile missiles. I don't think there are very many left. As I've watched a number of these strikes that have been filmed and then disseminated to the West, you don't see much response to incoming missiles anymore. If there is any, it's very modest. In many cases, none at all. I think Israel's in a lot of trouble. But remember, Israel has an opportunity in the minds of Mr. Netanyahu and his government that they may not have again, and that is absolute unconditional support from the United States. They have real control over the decision makers in Washington, and they want to exploit that to achieve their larger aims, which are not just to subdue Iran, but to establish their supremacy across the region and to dominate the region to the point where they can expand their borders as they see fit or will. This makes any sort of compromise impossible. It makes an end to this conflict impossible. It gives the United States Armed Forces mission impossible because we're there to beat everyone else into submission. We can't do that. It's beyond our resources and our capabilities.
And finally, Doug, just how devastated is Iran right now?
Well, I think they've certainly suffered some serious civilian casualties. Thousands of people have been killed. How many thousands, we don't know. Now, Alistair Crook, who has better access to the Iranian government and people in Iran than I do, seems to think that the Iranians thus far have actually sustained fewer casualties than they did during the 12-day war, that they evacuated promptly into shelters. They got people away. They had alternatives to existing hospitals because the Israelis had destroyed a lot of hospitals and aid stations. That was done early on. They seem to have expected that, so they were prepared for it. They seem to have weathered it pretty well. Now, I don't know what President Trump has up his sleeve, but based upon what he's saying, I guess we should expect the worst. And I think the Iranians are preparing for that. And again, the key point is this is a continental power half the size of India with 93 million people. They will take the damage. They will absorb the punishment, just as the Soviets absorbed enormous punishment in the past during World War II and during the invasion of Russia by Napoleon. They are a large area, a large population. They can't protect everything, so they don't try. They accept the fact that they're going to sustain damage. I think the Israelis have done that. But they also know how to mobilize their population and get them out there. And that's what happened with our special ops mission. My impression is that most of the people that did the fighting, and many of those who were probably killed, were actually local militia as opposed to part of a regular military force. So they're prepared. And I think they'll take whatever punishment is dished out and they will counterstrike. They will counterattack. Now, the final thing, and nobody mentions this, we have to keep this in mind. The Russians, the Chinese, the Turks, the Pakistanis, others are on the sidelines. They are watching this unfold. They are prepared to act at some point. They will not let this go on in perpetuity. And the pressure from the rest of the world to do something to stop us is going to become overwhelming. The Egyptians, they have the largest army in the region. They're the largest Muslim Arab state in the region. They are on a knife edge there. Sisi is in an unfortunate position. He doesn't want to attack right now, but he's under tremendous pressure from his population to act against the Israelis. He's got 100 million people there who are ready to fight. They're angry as hell. He might not last. I don't think most of the Arab governments that we see today will be there in a few months. So the entire region is going to go through dramatic turnover.
Wow.
Because you think the will of the Arabic population is to stop another Gaza from happening and has been all along. Yes. I mean, it's a source of great frustration that was allowed to happen while so many powerful leaders sat on their hands.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Well, and so many corrupt Egyptians who are making millions of dollars off of building concentration camps in Rafah, and who are really cleaning up on the black market and making so much money off of what will become this massive refugee crisis pouring into these concentration camps that they made all this money off of. So,
and the ruling classes in the Gulf states, many of them are living in Egypt right now. Mm-hmm. They fled the area. They're sitting in Egypt. The Egyptian population is not oblivious to this. They're well aware of it. Remember, we were instrumental in preventing the Muslim Brotherhood from seizing power. But the reason the Muslim Brotherhood came to power initially in Egypt was very simply because of the corruption that you're discussing. They're aware of it. They're sick of it. They're angry about it. That's why most of the Arabs in the Muslim Arab world don't have much use for the ruling elites in the Arabian Peninsula. They are seen as, quote unquote, the fat and the corrupt. We have been backing all of these people for years. So you can imagine how popular we are.
Right. And so I don't want to extrapolate too much here, but it's very possible that in the United States, anyone who does not support Israel will become a desirable candidate for future elections because we see it, because there's a national frustration at AIPAC co-opted politicians. And that could also happen in the Gulf regions, you say, which would be international, which would be an implosion of Israel's global support.
Yes, I think that's true. And I think you also have to extend some of this to Europe, because you have European leaders who are co-conspirators in the war that we are waging. But more important, they've utterly failed to protect their own populations. Remember, when you're the leader of a country, you're supposed to shelter, feed, and protect your people. What has happened in Europe? They're not being sheltered. They're not going to have enough to eat. They're not going to be able to power their systems, heat their homes, protect themselves, run hospitals. All hell is going to break loose in Europe, too. We've been waiting for this. You and I and others, we've talked about the problems in Europe. Well, I think all of this is going to suddenly come to fruition.
Colonel Douglas Macgregor, host of the National Conversation. You can read his great works over at the American Conservative as well. Anywhere else people can find your work lately, Colonel?
Yeah, you might look on the Substack. I've got a great Substack now. I've been writing one major essay every 7 days or so. And I've also posted some older things that I've edited. And we've got tens of thousands of subscribers coming in. It's very successful. And I urge people to go to that. I think they'll find what's there of great interest, because I'm trying to stay on the strategic level. The tactical situation isn't going to change a lot. We're going to continue to struggle. Strategically, what happens is key. And it's back to what we said at the very beginning, this economic catastrophe that is being created by the loss of 20% of the world's resources. It's more than that. Somebody said to me, well, it's about $15 million, 15 million barrels of oil a day off the market in the Gulf. Once you close off the Red Sea and the Houthis begin to operate, add another 11 million, you're looking at a global catastrophe economically.
Yeah.
And we should point out, just here's an update, Colonel. $42 billion has been spent so far on this war, Israel's war in Iran, just over about a month now in length, about $1 billion a day. So upward 42 billion, almost nearing 43. Maybe by the end of today's show, we'll hit that number. Doug, great to see you as always. Thank you for your insights. Everyone should read his Substack and subscribe. Colonel, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk about that F-15 being downed, potential for that second pilot who was also captured or rescued. Who's responsible for exposing that? President Trump says he's going to go after the journalist who wrote that and expose that. It turns out it's an Israeli journalist, so we'll see. We'll see if that actually gets held up. You're going to go after an Israeli journalist for breaking that story?
Specifically, and in fact, Miranda Devine was just saying she's running cover on this, saying that it was Israel.
Resistance report at Electronic Intifada, and returning guest Justin Podor at the Anti-Empire Project. We have a lot to get to, so gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a resistance report, John, how about we get started with you? I wanted to first play what Donald Trump said about this operation, the so-called rescue operation, now shrouded in all kinds of, I wouldn't even say mystery anymore, just various reports on what actually happened there. We do know that Iran did undertake an ambush of these U.S. Special Forces attempting to either rescue the pilot who was down, or colonel, or steal the uranium, or both. I want your take on this. But here is what Donald Trump said about the size of the operation, and then I want to get your take on what exactly happened here and why is it significant. Here we go.
The second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more. We were bringing them all over, and a lot of it was subterfuge.
So, John, I mean, that's a lot of aircraft, and they did lose some aircraft, which I will pull up as you're talking. But, John, what exactly happened here? How did Iran respond to this? What was actually the nature of this operation in your assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still obviously a lot we don't know, but from what we do know, the F-15 was shot down by Iranian air defenses. Both pilots ejected and ended up in roughly the same area. Over the course of several hours on the first day, in the daylight, the U.S. attempted the rescue operation, and in doing that, basically got lit up. They lost the A-10 Warthog that crash landed in Kuwait. They lost a couple of Black Hawk helicopters. They lost a couple of Reapers in that operation, and they failed and withdrew from that. And then what it appears to has happened is that they went back the next day under the cover of darkness. And that gives, obviously, the United States a massive advantage given their capabilities. And they successfully, apparently, got the weapons officer who was, I think a lot of the story that's left out is that, like, he was in communication with the U.S. from the time that he goes down. He's got a transponder. They knew where he was. He moved into the mountains. That was in a valley. What you're looking at there on the screen is in the valley. He moved up into the mountains and was in full communication with the U.S. And so, and the U.S. didn't let anyone get within, 3 miles of the scene. So it just isn't as heroic a story as is being told. The U.S. has all the advantage in this situation. I mean, even just like talking about the troops that go in there, the amount of, the 2 C-130s that were combat search and rescue C-130s, they come in with special forces who are trained to do this kind of operation all year round, for the last decade, they're the most elite trained troops in the U.S. military, and they have 2 million service members to call upon to cull to get these special forces that could be inserted into this. So given all of those advantages, the fact that they apparently needed to blow up the HC-130s before they left, blow up the helicopters before they left because they were stuck in the mud. I mean, I don't know. That story doesn't seem super strong. I imagine there's going to be a lot more that we learn in the coming days. But yeah, when you take a look at the resources that the U.S. had and that Trump quote that you played, he was saying that they literally took all of their resources in the region and turned them towards this single operation in the southwest of Iran, in the mountains, away from cities. So a lot of the complexity of the operation, it kind of washes away when you see that analysis. So they did something that they are, pretty good at doing, both because of the resources that they have and because of the training that they have, for their permanent war state.
Well, Justin, I wanted to now let's play the Iranian take, and I'm actually going to read it because it's the military spokesperson of the IRGC giving Iran's take of what happened here. Mute it here and read it. So, following the desperate efforts of the U.S. terrorist army, and he continues to carry out a rescue operation for the pilot of its downed fighter jet. Several enemy aircraft entered our beloved country of Iran in the early hours of April 5th, 2026. A number of these aircraft, including 2 C-130 transport planes, military transport planes, and 2 Black Hawk helicopters were hit and forced to make emergency landings in an area south of Isfahan. So a lot of people have been making note of the location, Isfahan, as possibly a staging ground of an operation to do what Trump has been and the administration has been plotting, which is to seize the uranium from a nuclear site like Isfahan. And then was this that I want you to comment on if you saw it. It hasn't been, I don't think, confirmed yet, but this is from Iranian media, RT, reporting that someone named Amanda Ryder, her ID, her U.S. Air Force ID, was recovered from the wreckage, and an Israeli visa was found. Hold on one second. Let me pull that up here. Here it is. The ID of the U.S. Air Force's Amanda Ryder was recovered from an aircraft wreckage after the rescue mission. An Israeli visa was found. So, Justin, your comments, what do you think is going on here? Iran says they took American casualties. They saw it with their own eyes. But the U.S., Trump, Hegseth, they came out today and said, God is good. Everything went very smoothly other than blowing up the aircraft, as John noted.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of really high quality information. So we do have to use logic here where we can. And I don't see how that much destruction could happen with manned aircraft and soldiers and have no one die. We also have to remember that according to American sources, virtually nobody has died ever fighting Iran. There are always injuries. There are lots of injuries, and then people die in accidents afterwards. So this one, I do think that if there were a lot of U.S. casualties, there would be that graveyard of aircraft that we saw would have had lots of dead bodies as well, unless the Iranians took them away. But it's what the patterns that I've seen so far are that Iranians more or less have been telling the truth as they've seen it. And when before this rescue operation concluded, I saw a message from, I think, one of the Iranian sources where they said, if we did have them, we wouldn't tell you. So it was sort of like that. Even that's truthful in a way, right? They're sort of like, we're not going to tell you. but I don't see them like manipulating the site in that way or anything like that. I mean, so I don't know if there were huge casualties that the Americans are saying didn't happen. I do think, if they wanted to, because we did hear a little bit about this uranium snatch plan. The idea was, as I heard it, was that they were going to go snatch the uranium, build a runway, and fly out. I guess they found this runway near Isfahan, so that solves their runway problem. But it still seems like a big force, too big for a rescue, but it seems too small for a uranium snatch. So I think maybe they were just trying to build a base. Like the first step of a ground war is to set up a base somewhere where you could then start loading tons of other stuff and material, and maybe they did their map, they analyzed their maps, and they were like, here's a runway, we can turn this into a base and we can go from here. And the other consideration, like John was saying, the dream of like a go in and do something and get out, like that's the model that they're going on. They were really pleased with how that went in Venezuela, presumably, because Venezuela was preparing for a long guerrilla war against an occupation, and the Americans just went in for a couple 20 minutes and left, so leaving the Venezuelans with nobody to really fight and nothing to get going. And so the Iranian defense plan is presumably also, like, they have millions of men. They have people ready to fight. They know the Americans very well. They have lots of equipment, but they have a gigantic area to defend too. So they're not going to be there in numbers in every corner where the Americans can fly to. It's going to take them a while to get there. Maybe a lot of them would have to drive there. The drones would get there first. So some remote corner where the Americans are trying to set something up and get it going, and it takes the Iranians a while to get there, and then there's a battle and the Americans withdraw. That all makes perfect sense to me in terms of what happened. None of the stuff about pilots and rescues and Amanda's Amanda Ryder, like, it's a bit on the nose in terms of like making fun of the name and stuff, right? Amanda,
it's a real person, supposedly.
I don't know.
It's a real story.
Did the Americans leave that there? I don't know. The whole thing is weird to me. Like recovering the recovered passports after 9/11. Like, how is there an ID? Like, why'd she bring her ID on a mission?
That's always the question.
I don't understand it. Is that what you do? I don't know. Yeah.
No, great. Well, I think those are really good questions. And John, I mean, if what Justin is saying is true, and there's a lot of, I think, good points to follow there toward the truth of the matter, that means the U.S. Failed dramatically, because there is no forward operating base coming out of Iran after this operation, and the U.S. has refused to acknowledge any such thing. This is just a heroic operation to rescue one guy who happened to be a colonel with, but many say, a much higher ranking than what you would normally take on a standard mission that he was on. But then, there's all of this talk about this being an operation. Many people are saying that this is a fake story, that simply this is about stealing the uranium and making that forward operating base. So, John, your comments on this. I mean, how did Iran in particular hit back so hard? Because this is being underestimated. The Trump administration is saying they didn't do anything there, but yet there's videos everywhere of a gunfight. We hear it. And Iran is saying, even in their Lego videos, that everybody was involved. People were stopping traffic and, helping the local forces get to the location. I mean, obviously a lot happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about the forward base. I'm not sure the value of that 200 kilometers inland. I think it's on the wrong side of the mountains if Isfahan was the target. So I'm not sure about that in terms of military logic of why you would have a long supply line from there, and that is going to be hit by the integrated air defense systems that the Iranians run. And they run them on a guerrilla style where they set up ambush zones rather than have an umbrella defense. And so if you were trying to feed that base, you would be coming along a track of land, hundreds of kilometers track of land, in which the Iranians would be able to use their surface to air ambush tactics for air defense. So I'm not sure about that. I mean, this is a thing. I think we could speculate a lot of what might be, but based on the evidence that we have right now, I'm inclined to believe that they lost a pilot by an air defense operation by the Iranians. And then when they went to get the pilot, they lost a bunch more assets that made it a dicey operation, at which point they withdrew. Effectively, they withdrew for a day and a half, and then went back in at a time in the night and botched the extraction in a pretty spectacular way to lose those planes. So yeah, I mean, it's the difficult part about the way that the U.S. has handled information in this war, like lying about things that are already proven, and then hiding things that we know these bases have been targeted. We know they're lying about their casualties. The question is how much they're lying about their casualties. All of those things, I think, if we knew them, would put a much more how many were injured just in the extraction of that single weapons officer. And then they didn't, on the second day, they didn't have the A-10 Warthog close air support. So it's just, it took the most financed military on earth, the most well-resourced military on earth with the most soldiers to get one pilot out of or one weapons officer out of a pretty much barren mountain area. If that had have happened in an area where people could reach it easily, I think this would be just a completely different story. And I think that that mountain range, I mean, I was taking the Google Earth drive, around to try to see what would make sense for the Americans. They don't need an air with those search and rescue, combat search and rescue C-130s. They don't need runways. I mean, that's the selling point of them. But it sure sounded like they needed a runway. So it's not clear that this was as successful an operation as the U.S. is trying to frame it. And it would have been, it was really egg on the face of the ridiculous statements of Trump saying that there was zero air defenses, and then you get so many assets lost it doesn't fit on a single page.
Yeah.
You can do it with the right infographic, you can fit it on a single page. Just make sure it's to scale.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Well, Justin, I mean, with what John just said there, we had Pete Hegseth call this operation incredibly humiliating for Iran's military, and they know it. They know that this was incredibly humiliating for them, and yet Iran doesn't seem to be acting like that. They're incredibly humiliated. Actually, Iran on the other side is saying, well, we responded very quick to this violation, on our territory. And they're claiming that these losses that I had pulled up earlier are theirs, that the U.S. did try to blow up. They claim that the U.S. tried to blow up the pilot himself, and they try to blow up anyone that that they couldn't retrieve, as they try to hightail out of there. But what do you make of these comments by Hegseth? And let me actually play this from Hegseth, because this is, I think, why people can't really believe the United States right now about anything in this war. The theatrics of it all. I mean, just listen to this short comment that he made at the press conference about what happened in the beginning of this whole ordeal.
Ground airmen evaded capture for more than a day, scaling rugged ridges while hunted by the enemy. when he was finally able to activate his emergency transponder, his first message was simple and it was powerful. He sent a message, God is good. In that moment of isolation and danger, his faith and fighting spirit shone through. You see, shot down on a Friday, Good Friday, hidden in a cave, a crevice, all of Saturday, and rescued on Sunday. Flown out of Iran as the sun was rising on Easter Sunday. A pilot reborn, all home and accounted for, a nation rejoicing. God is good.
So it's a biblical prophecy. Everything that just happened here, just according to
given that Trump said, praise be to Allah, I would have thought Hegseth might have said God is great instead of God is good, right?
Yeah, which
translation
I'm
of
sure
God
the
is
pilot
great.
was probably saying that for sure.
Yeah.
How do we translate God is great into Arabic again? So, so I just, and the other thing is like, why is the pilot's name a secret? Like wouldn't it be cool to have a ceremony with the pilot? Like, at the White House and maybe his family.
Especially for U.S. lore. I mean, isn't it the pinnacle of U.S. exceptionalism to show how heroic this guy was? They do this for lesser things like shootings, all of this. I mean, this is crazy. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
He should be on the. Yeah, he should be at this. He should be at this meeting. I think it's unfair that he doesn't get to be at this meeting. This brave Colonel, and I also feel like what do you call them? The internet sleuths ought to be able to, process of elimination, figure out who he was. I mean, colonels are not like he's not like a covert operator, right? Is he an army colonel or a marine or something? How many colonels are there? Are there thousands of colonels deployed? Like, I just think this. Like, I don't know if people are saying it's because he's dead. I don't know if there ever was a colonel. I don't know if there's any reason. I don't see any reason to believe any of these plot points. Like, I'm partly criticizing this as a fiction writer here. Some of this stuff is not a very good writing, and so you want your story to hang together. You want there to be some logical progression from one part of the story to the next, and a lot of it is missing here. So we have only their word on all of this, on this pilot going missing, the pilot existing, the story of him going to this hiding in a crevice and then flying to safety. We don't know anything. And I don't believe anything they say. The thing that I'm looking for is Iranian sources, and they're not saying all that much. So it's hard to know there too, because even the ones that claim to know, like I've seen officials say the whole story will come out, but they don't say, here's the story. They say, we'll see. They're all saying it wasn't a rescue. So the Iranian sources that I've seen are all saying it wasn't a rescue. It was a much bigger thing. And it'll be revealed in due course. So the only sources that have told anything resembling accurate information are not explaining what happened.
Yeah, and we should watch What We Wish For, because this guy may end up getting a movie that
that's fine. That's fine. He can have a movie.
Well, there were also some reports. I don't know if you saw, one of the big questions people had was, how did this person walk so far in order and survive? I believe it was hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, likely up mountains or various mountains, hills, whatever in that region. Even Pete Hegseth said a crevice, cave, right? Those are two very different things. There's a lot of storytelling here, John, but maybe you could tell us what exactly does the lay of the land of the actual battlefield look like? Because Donald Trump, just as all this is happening, it was reported that he, through mediators, is really trying to push a 45-day ceasefire. and that's kind of the where we are hanging right now. Is this Iran has to accept a ceasefire, or it's going to get obliterated again, right? So your take on the lay of the actual battlefield lands right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the sites that we saw burning, which I think are obviously the sites of at least a significant portion of it, it looks like they landed in a valley, in a wadi, and that there was a mountainside right up from there, and that he climbed up some amount of distance to get off of the ground. And then they had drones over him the whole time that didn't let anyone get within miles of him. So those engagements prevented, I think, any kind of Iranian rescue, which was the point, because they knew where he was. I think, they have transponders, they have encrypted communications, they have a whole setup for this to happen. So it wasn't like they were looking for a needle in a haystack, which is the way that they like to make it seem like they did this heroic, deep inside Iran operation. But in reality, he was pretty sheltered on the mountainside. If you have drones over him constantly shooting at anyone that approaches. So yeah, I think that the heroism of this story, I don't see it. I just don't see it because of the evidence that we have seen right now. The attempt to get him on the first day, I mean, maybe it's a she, to get them on the first day failed pretty spectacularly. Trump says the entire every air asset they had was deferred away from the battle and focused on this person and rescuing this person. And with that, the air defense systems of the Iranians were able to take down, I mean, they've been able to take down basically one of every kind of plane that the Americans have flown so far. And I think that if they had tried that again in the daylight, I think probably the same thing would have happened. I think they got the small window of the night to get the person out. And I guess that's just really all that we know at this point. If you look at the Google Earth of where the plane went down, you can pretty clearly see the mountain that he would go up on and that he could get up on it. It was pretty gradual. It wasn't sharp cliffs. It was, I think the crevice comes from the fact that it looked pretty spiny all the way up. So you would just get into one of those tracks and hike to safety, at which point your guys are communicating with you that you're going to be rescued and that people aren't going to come up to where you are. So that from that point, it seems to be the plane went down in a sparsely populated area. For sure, it's within distance of Isfahan, but again, I don't see for there to be a forward base there. I mean, it would be under fire from all sides, and then there would have to be this 200-kilometer inland supply line that would have to be completely secured. So, I mean, I don't think they can get a beachhead, from the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, let alone hundreds of kilometers in. And I would suspect that the reason there wasn't more planes taken down was because they didn't need to send more planes. Once they knew where the guy was, the goal was to find a time that you can go in and get him, where you don't lose all your assets or your human assets. And they did that, but then they lost their assets. So it's not really, a clean mission. It's definitely not, the Hegseth story. I mean, they said at one point he was injured. So if he was
Seriously,
injured,
he said he was seriously injured too. Trump did.
Yeah, to then climb, I don't know, those. But yeah, I think that why do we not see the person's name? I can't remember a time where there's been a story like this that we haven't that we haven't seen the names, and it just matches with all of the secrecy of this war, because frankly, the Americans are not winning this war. They're just not. And, all these threats about, tomorrow night, this show might be stale by 8 p.m. tomorrow night when, Trump escalates the war to a level that
no one has ever seen.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen
it's
before.
the biggest ever. But if that were to happen, the Gulf states are going to be eliminated. And so that, that style of warfare that Trump is threatening is really it'll be catastrophic for Iran, but it'll be catastrophic for the U.S. Footprint in the region, because the countries that are all in the Gulf, right across the lake from Iran, all single point of failure infrastructure, right? Like desalination plants, their fuel deep. They're small countries, so their fuel, their energy projects aren't all spread out over the land like Iran's are. I just think that escalation, that is not going to win the Americans the war. It's going to redraw the map of the Middle East, and I don't know if Trump has. I don't know if he has that in him. So I guess we're going to see.
Yeah, well, he said, Justin, at this press conference that the entire country could be taken out in one night, and that night may be tomorrow night, referencing this, I think, 8 p.m. Eastern time deadline. Iran, though, has essentially given the middle finger to this deadline and to any ceasefire proposal like the 45-day one that has been relayed through Pakistan. Iran rejects temporary ceasefire and instead demands what it's been demanding since the beginning of the war, which is a permanent end to all theaters in the Middle East, all war theaters, Lebanon, Gaza, Iran, with guarantees, implementation of a transit protocol that recognizes Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, which is essentially already underway, the lifting of economic sanctions on Iran, and acknowledging the right to peacefully enrich uranium under the NPT and UN Charter, and paying reparations for damages. So it doesn't seem like Iran is capitulating here, Justin. So what does that say about then where this war is? Trump and it feels like Trump and the chief of staff and Pete Hegseth and John Ratcliffe, they were trying to portray a lot of confidence and that things are going very well at the moment. But maybe you can help us understand what this tells us then, that Iran is rejecting the ceasefire despite these massive threats.
When you look at the overall picture of how this war has been conducted, and like you just try to ask yourself, which side of this war looks like it's implementing a plan that it's step by step following. If they do this, we'll do this. If we see that, we'll do this. And we march towards our objective in a kind of systematic way. And which side seems to be making up objectives as they go along. Like the US has, like I had this tweet the other day that did pretty well, where I said, they started off with their objective being preventing weapons that weren't being made. They moved on to trying to open a strait that wasn't closed. And then they moved on to trying to rescue pilots who weren't missing until after their operation. So they just keep moving on from one plan to another. I don't, as legendary, even if you take them at their word about how wonderful and legendary and unprecedented this rescue operation was, it was a rescue operation. So presumably already, if you're doing a rescue operation, something has happened that you didn't want to happen in the first place. The escalation ability of Iran has, for anyone who's paying attention, including the Americans, it's been definitively shown. Every time they've said they were going to destroy something, they said, if you do this, we're going to destroy that. then the Israelis destroy something. They say, okay, you destroyed this thing. We said we were going to destroy that. Tomorrow we're going to destroy that. And then they do. The next day they destroy it. So similarly, now Trump has said, tomorrow I'm going to destroy the power plants and bridges. And the Iranians have said, if Trump follows through with this foolhardy plan, we will destroy everything in an irreparable way. And so I just don't see any reason anybody should have to think that they're bluffing. They're not. They have not. They haven't even once done that. So there is now the last thing I'll say about this is if you take, like John was saying, he has this phrase, the single point of failure infrastructure. If everything in the Middle East is turned into ash, Iran will rise from the ash. So will Palestine and Lebanon and probably Syria and some of these societies. But the Gulf states will not. The Gulf states are, they're not societies; they're theme parks, right? I saw that online. Somebody said, if the people who work in a place can't afford to live in that place, you don't have a city, you have a theme park. And the Gulf states are theme parks. They won't rise from the ashes, and you can't. There's no such thing really the last thing. There's no such thing as taking out a country in a day. Not a 90. You can, if you're willing to use nuclear weapons, take out a city in a day. As horrific as that is, there's no mechanism for taking out a country of 90 million people that's the size of France and Germany combined in a day. If people think about France and Germany combined or some context that they know a little better, they'll see there's no way to take. You can maybe destroy the entire planet. It might be it's a problem on that order. So again, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I just to second that, like the Gulf would be wiped out, and it's not hard to do because the Gulf is essentially a collection of cities, right? It's not, they don't have hinterlands.
They don't have mountains that they've buried their missile cities in, or their, resilient,
or their desalination plant. Like if that plant goes and you don't have water, it's not, it doesn't take a water geologist, whoever, rocket scientist for water geology to tell you that you're not going to last long in the Middle East if you're desalination plants. And those have been targeted. Those are said to be targets. And every time Iran says they're going to target them, they do. And every time the U.S. tries for escalation dominance, they really just strengthen Iran's hand at this point. And now, sitting here 38 days into the war, Iran is in the process of overthrowing the sanctions regime, recovering their currency through the Strait of Hormuz toll booth, making their countries around them in their neighborhood more likely to not want war than to end this war, saying, we need more weapons to protect against Iran. I think they're going to look at the Gulf and say it makes a lot allied with the people who are, controlling the strait where our fuel exits. So it's just really, Trump never has like a program, but whatever this program is all in Iran's favor. And I don't see what the way out is if Trump, other than to wake up one morning and just say the war's over. And then at that point, does Iran decide the war's over? Does Israel decide the war's over? And I think that's one of the really important things that have come from this war, is that Iran, in those points that you listed, they want all the wars on all the fronts to end. And that is the thing that the region is desperate for, because the ceasefire in Gaza is garbage. It's just a license to kill. And it's been consistently that way. And if it is to continue in Gaza, that you can just assassinate any Qassam figure or any government figure at any point, that cannot continue. That's the situation that was in Lebanon. because they also had a garbage ceasefire that allowed Israel to just assassinate everybody. If Iran is able to enforce ceasefires in Palestine and in Lebanon, the strength of that axis of resistance and that alliance that, over at some points over the last 3 years has been called into question, is absolutely not under these circumstances. They have the power to be the dominant force in the region, and they're carrying out the war in that way. They're not firing ballistic missiles that will leave them with nothing or little to enforce the period after the war. They're seeing a life after the war where being continually able to fire at any point is a crucial part of their long-term strategy. Whereas the Americans are in this race where they have a finite number of interceptors. They're trying to make do with them. And at some point they run out, and there's not more coming.
And
so
by the way,
longer the war goes on, the more it's in Iran's favor.
And Bloomberg recently tried to count the JASSMs, the stealth cruise missiles that they have, and they counted not very many left. And when they run out of those or get close, they're going to start doing more runs of their bombers over Iran, exposing them to air defense, and many more planes will be shot down. There will be planes shot down like we've never seen before.
Donald Trump might have difficulty holding himself back.
And I do, by the way, I do think that that's what's going to happen. I don't think the Americans are going to call it off. I don't think they're going to stop. I think they're going to go way beyond what most of us thought their tolerance was. I think their tolerance for protecting Israel and allowing the Gulf to be destroyed is going to prove to be a lot higher than we thought. And I think Iran would have liked it to be otherwise, but I do think Iran is prepared for that possibility as well. And I think that, like, the way you put it, John, like, I think that Iran wants to inherit whatever is left of the region as the rightful hegemon of the region, morally as well. Like, Egypt could have been the hegemon of the region, and Turkey could have been the hegemon of the region. They're both in the region. They're both big. They're potentially strong, but they just decided to give away their sovereignty to America and Israel. So that it leaves it to Iran. And if Iran doesn't want to destroy everything, they don't. Why should they? They're going to be running the place after. And so I that's what I think is behind the restraint, such as it is that we've seen. But once Bridge, what's he calling it? Bridge Day. Once Bridge Day and Power Plant Day comes, there's no longer any reason for Iran to not respond in kind. So
and the U.S. propaganda is that they're firing at innocent civilians in these Gulf countries, but there's no record of that whatsoever. So they have seemingly been fighting this war as if these countries are going to be their neighbors when the war is over. And part of driving the U.S. out of the region is to be allied with those countries. But once you're destroying, the Iranian nation, and using those countries to do it, especially if they're running out of, long-range aerial cruise missiles, they're, going to be firing their ATACMs and their precision strike munitions from those Gulf countries. I think all bets are off.
I mean, and what is, with the word, it's almost like a different kind of war of attrition, not like the one we see in Ukraine, but one where, I don't know if you heard John and Justin, the Iranians are saying that they are, not only are they firing very strategically, obviously, but they're also producing still, that they're not, it's not like they're just loading up the missile launchers, their underground launchers, whatever, and the missiles are going and that's it. No, that they actually have a production system that's still happening, mainly underground, that the United States cannot hit, and that the New York Times even said the United States cannot hit because they think they're all they're just mistaking decoys for actual missile systems, and that's led to this. This is even J.P. Morgan talking about how, especially against Israel, the hit rate that Iran is essentially leveling onto Israel has increased dramatically, and now we're hearing something like 8 out of 10 missiles that Iran fires at Israel are getting through. And every day we see the results, and I'll put those up. Whoever wants to comment on this, I mean, that this seems to indicate that what Iran is trying to do is it's going to go the long haul to get exactly what it wants, regardless of whatever the U.S. says, and whatever it does, they're prepared for matching that.
We haven't seen the best stuff that Iran has. They've been firing ballistic missiles. They have better ballistic missiles, more difficult to intercept ballistic missiles that they're not using. The Sejils, the Hajj Qassims, they have those ready and numerous. They've been preparing for this war for 2 generations. And the war is going exactly how they would have thought that the war was going, right? There's no, military science in the United States that is, going over the head of Trump to make a proper military strategy in this situation. So really everything that Iran, planned for is happening. And the long-term goal or the long-term benefit out of this is that the Strait of Hormuz was never treated as an Iranian asset. Iran treated it as an international waterway. They, threatened wartime conditions should the war happen. They told us this before Trump launched the war, exactly what would happen. But that's not ever going back. So Iran has that asset now that just completely changes this last, generation of maximum pressure sanctions, and gives them a really strong position. At each of these turns that you look, Iran is in a very strong position. And what the Americans are doing, and the Israelis especially, are blowing up schools, universities, that kind of warfare. They're not hitting deep bunkers over and over again with the, giving the idea that they know that that's a missile base. We haven't seen any of that. We definitely have seen a lot of decoys, and we've seen a lot of just like pot shots, like taking out, 40-year-old naval vessels, and then saying that the Navy is destroyed when the Navy is primarily a set of fast boats, with missiles on them that can do whatever they want in the strait. And they have those all still in underground bases ready to be used. They haven't used, there hasn't been a need for Iran to use any of these things because fighting the war with their old missiles at a slow pace, it's still working. Israel gets 13 to 18 warnings a day where people are running into their shelters. The warnings, because of the early warning radars that have been destroyed, are slower warnings, and they cover more area because the radar can't hone in exactly on where the trajectory is landing. So they have these huge swaths of area that are under sirens that they never used to have before. They used to be able to be pretty pinpoint about it. If Iran turns to decide, and Iran hasn't been targeting civilian targets in Israel, they've been firing those submunitions, and occasionally a submunition will end up in a civilian area, but they're clearly targeting the military industrial base of the Israelis. And they're not hitting Tel Aviv with, 2-ton warheads, which they have many of them. So this war has a lot of room for Iranian escalation, and they hold the escalation dominance over a country, that has a multi-trillion-dollar military infrastructure. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah,
they said the Iranians have said twice, don't bother trying to count. because our production, you can't touch it. It's where you can't reach it, and you'll never know. But we have plenty. The other, there's a podcast I was on. Resistance is Fertile, and one of the hosts is Indy. If you go to indie.ca is his writing, and he said, the way the Americans talk about the Iranians running out of missiles is like going to a bakery at the end of the day and saying there's no more bread. Like if they bake it in the morning, there's going to be bread again in the morning. And so there's just you can't actually that's why I even found that I kind of chuckled a little when you showed that chart, Danny, because these charts that people are trying to come up with to count missiles and percentages as if they can count down from some fixed number. There's production, there's a rate of production, there's a rate of getting the inputs for the production. There you can speed up or slow down the expenditure, and that all applies on the other side too. I don't necessarily think that the Americans or the Israelis are going to run out of anything. When they get low enough, they're going to change their behavior and adopt a new policy that's a little bit different and less advantageous to them. But you can't watch and then like come up with a strategy for like out counting the other side. That's not how this war is going to be decided. And ultimately this war is going to be decided by Iran. It's going to be decided by Iran, and Iran is going to decide when it ends and when their terms have been when their conditions have been met.
Yeah, and it seems like the United States is quite okay at this point, even though you see it in whatever it is, the financial mainstream media, the mainstream media journal, the 24-hour news cycle, the military experts, all of them, they don't like it, but they're okay with the United States doing what they're doing right now, which is drawing away from other parts of the world. That's what they've been doing this for quite some time over the course of this war, taking from Korea, taking from the Asia theater, because despite the desire for there to be a preparedness against China, which was always a fantasy, I believe, to begin with, but despite their desire for that, this is happening right now, and they're getting their butts kicked right now, and they need this to keep going. But John, your comments on because a lot of people are making note of what Justin brought up there, and then his earlier point about JASSMs. We know about the air defense interceptors. It feels to me, though, that the economic consequences of this war may catch up far faster than even the military, consequences for the U.S. and Israel. But and the region and the Gulf.
That's absolutely the truth. And so the longer the war goes, the more it's in Iran's favor again. So each of these vectors that we analyze, it's Iran each time, because once there's a certain amount of oil that was in the system, but once that starts to dry up, and then because of the large scale oil projects being shut down and require time to fire those back up, and then the straight up what they call flow rate, which is even if you had the oil, how many barrels can you get to X, Y, or Z place in the world? There's a limit to that. So it's going to take, even if the war ended yesterday, it's going to take months to repair the damage from it. And every day that it goes on longer is more of a benefit to Iran. And it's also more of a deterrence for this, marauding Israeli military and American military on their side, that these wars, if you're going to start these genocidal wars, the world economy is going to immediately be impacted. That is such an advance in Iranian power.
Civilization.
Yeah, it really is.
And it takes them from, the 3 weeks before the war, when they had, when their currency was essentially annihilated, to now mid-war, their currency is bounced back. The Economist is writing about how it's made them so rich, this war. Like I said, every vector is not in the American interest. And to continually escalate against a country that has escalation dominance over you, because they can fire missiles from anywhere in the country. So the Americans can go around bombing all the bridges and all the power plants, but that's not going to do anything for the launching of short-range ballistic missiles at the Gulf and Gulf infrastructure. When we were talking about what weapons, they haven't even brought out their better drones. They have far better drones, the Shahed 236s that they could bring out that they haven't really used yet. And those are they're faster. They have a heavier warhead. They are very difficult to jam electronically, and they're super precise. And so those tools coming out of the tool bag when you're supposed to be running out of things and you're pulling out higher caliber materiel to fight the battle, it's just it's remarkable. And Iran had this sort of sitting there through all of, when you think about all the geopolitical phases that we've gone through in the last few years. Even when you kind of look back to True Promise 1 and 2 and I guess less so 3, because they hit pretty hard there. Iran has been very, they haven't been blustery about this. They took their time. They were very cautious about it. And now that their moment is here, they appear to be ready to seize it. And I think that that's something that you do hear from the Iranian spokespeople and from just the general vibe within the military in Iran, that they are going to seize. They're not going to let this moment pass. With regional impacts, my primary job is covering Palestine and covering Gaza, and the way that war ended is horrible. And the genocide is still continuing. And the fact that you could have the resistance axis step forward in this moment and take advantage of enforcing a ceasefire, it's the same for Lebanon as well. It's a genocidal war in the south of Lebanon, run by ethnic cleansing and targeting people for their race and nationality. So,
Can I just say, Danny, I know you have an interest in China, and this is benefiting China. There's a book I read called "Here Comes the Sun." It's kind of like my my day job is to study environmental issues and environmental management. And the book, it's a book by Bill McKibben, and he's talking about the kind of rollout of solar energy all over the world. And someone is quoted in that book as saying, you're going to love this, that China is the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy.
That's hilarious, actually.
And
That's
so,
great.
if the idea is, and it's going to have to be, that the best way to try to reduce dependence of the world on Iran's power over the Strait of Hormuz is to go renewable, well, that's fine, because you're going to have to get that technology from China. So it really is not the time. It's not the West's time. It's not the petrodollar. The petrodollar's time does not seem like it's going to last much longer.
No,
it may already be over.
Well, Trump was asked about this toll too, and he just redirected it back to, "Oh, we'll be running the toll because we're winning." I think he literally said this, but Iran is actually enforcing this toll right now and saying not to publicly that this is to accumulate reparations for the war because they need to rebuild and it's their waterway. They're like, it's our waterway with Oman, and then, but there are these consequences too. Now, Saudi oil, and this is going to happen across the board. It's going to keep happening the longer this goes. If Trump, this is what maybe final comments on this, guys. Every time Trump, it's such an interesting trap to be in. Every time the United States and Israel go farther up the escalation ladder, the bigger the consequences are for the entirety of the oil petrodollar dominated global economy. And so if this time tomorrow, or about 24 to 36 hours tomorrow, they are hitting every power plant, or as many as they can, as many oil fields as they can, we're going to keep seeing this. Saudi oil, everyone's oil, the entirety of the oil markets go up to astronomical rates. And that's I guess, final comments on how does that influence the battlefield, especially since there's something even bigger than this that people miss, which, John, you alluded to, which is that there's an entire resistance force movement very much in motion. And with Iran and the rest are not looking to step back until they get what they want and they get what they find is just.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that that's what it is, and I hope they stand firm on that regional element for sure. The price of oil will go up. It will benefit certain countries when the price goes up, but when the Saudi infrastructure has been shut down, that's going to take a long time of not. It's going to take a long time to fix, and I don't think we even fully understand how long it will take to fix. And I think that's something that's going to be felt in every household, probably all over the world.
If you need oil, you're probably going to have to go to Russia. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's going to be renewables from China, oil from Russia if everything is destroyed, and oil from Iran, via the Strait of Hormuz, for which you have to pay Iran if everything isn't destroyed, whatever there is that exists.
But you'll pay Iran less than the insurance that is being charged for these tankers already. So you may get support from the tanker industry to actually do that in the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not that crazy. A lot of other straits, a lot of other canals charge tolls. It's a basic, in some ways you might wonder, and I'm sure they do in Iran, wonder why they didn't do it before.
Yeah. Well, and then Donald Trump would disagree with both of you guys. He would say, well, everyone's going to buy oil from us, which is actually not going to be the case at all. But that's the hill that the United States at this point, the hegemon, the empire, is dying on right now, is Trump's belief that everyone's going to want to turn into, be a Venezuela, for example. And then you find out that a lot of Venezuelan oil is going to China, and that this so-called control may not be as firm.
And to rebuild all of these weapons, they need these critical minerals that are in China as well. And so they're firing their arrows. There's really, they're doing it.
They're firing their golden arrows at the wooden kites that the Persian cats are sending towards them.
Well, guys, any final comments you want to make? Anything that we didn't discuss here that you want to get in here before?
To send a dozen military aircraft, 100 servicemen. They all got out alive, except for the fact that some of these aircraft, some of these helicopters got stuck in the mud. And so the US chose to destroy them in order to get everyone out. Not to mention the fact that Isfahan just happens to be the site where Iran does have a nuclear facility, where reports in the West are speculating that Iran is keeping some of its highly enriched uranium stockpiles. So how do you view this entire saga, and what does it tell us about where the U.S. military stands in this war?
Well, it's very
revolutionary. Salute to our brother LRP for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the little soldiers. Salute. Appreciate that donation, family.
Embarrassing, and that's why they've invented this Hollywood narrative, which I'm sure they're going to transform into some kind of a movie in the future that we're all going to be subjected to. But the mere fact that Iran was able to shoot down an F-15E fighter jet over their airspace less than 24 hours after Donald Trump had given an address where he was claiming that all of Iran's air defenses had been destroyed. In fact, we've heard for weeks and weeks from both the Secretary of War and the US president that Iran has no navy, it has no missiles left, most of its launchers are destroyed, it's on its last legs, there's no air defenses. But then suddenly an F-15 is shot down over Iranian territory. And many people don't know this, but it was expected that the United States should recover its pilots. Because in such a large country like Iran, in such vast territory, it's very difficult to locate these pilots for the Iranians and the Iranian side. And that's why locals set up their own search teams. And you had the besieged paramilitary forces who were sort of deployed in different areas to try and search for these pilots. And it wasn't actually the Iranian army, the IRGC, that were on the ground and doing most of the search work, because, again, it's such a massive territory. On the other hand, the US pilots are well trained for these scenarios, and their rescue operations are very efficient and effective. So the mere fact that on the first day, when they managed to rescue the first pilot, they lost a Warthog attack plane, which was downed. They had 2 Black Hawk helicopters, which were at least damaged and had to retreat. That is a stunning embarrassment of the US military that happened. And then the next day, we get into the big Hollywood movie narrative where we hear all these conflicting reports that, you know, the pilot, the other pilot was seriously wounded and even critically wounded and managed to hike, 90 miles or something like that from the crash zone in order to evade the Iranian authorities. And then suddenly there's this massive mission using hundreds of US personnel, which instead of retrieving the pilot where the pilot landed, hundreds of kilometers away decided to land. And then, of course, as well, they lost the C-130 aircraft, at least one of them. There's evidence was destroyed at this crash site, and these Little Bird helicopters, which were there too. And we heard from the Iranian side that a drone was also downed, and there was some sort of clash with local forces. And they definitely did use airstrikes against some Iranian local forces who came to confront the American landing. This is not some kind of heroic story. This is what they're supposed to do. But instead of simply extracting 2 pilots and retreating, it was turned into this massive operation, which it appears like something else was going on here. Because the site where the US forces landed, and we saw this, the footage that emerged, which the Iranian media shared of the destroyed aircraft, US aircraft, which, by the way, these operations cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in aircraft destroyed. They're putting in danger their own forces in order to extract 2 pilots. And they don't admit how many were actually injured. There were some reports saying that there were casualties. But even if there weren't, the amount that they lost and the amount of money that they spent in order to extract these pilots, after the US had said that Iranian air defenses no longer exist and they managed to down an F-15, is embarrassing. So maybe there was actually another mission which was going on. A lot of people are speculating, like you said, there are nuclear facilities nearby. We have heard that the United States wanted to inject special forces teams to try and retrieve highly enriched uranium. However, it could have been not actually a mission to do that yet, but a preparation. They wanted to do a landing to see, to test the Iranians and see whether something like that would be successful. So there are a number of different details which I don't think are yet confirmed. But what we do know for sure is this is a disaster for the United States. But again, we're going to see some Hollywood movie made of this, and Tom Cruise is likely going to star in that movie.
Yeah, I would expect nothing less. And even just reading Trump's post being like, oh, we got him. It's a colonel, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we have not seen any images of this guy, no video footage. We have no identification. So I'm curious to see if we get that or kind of how that lines up, because, yeah, the American people have got to be looking at this and going, okay, that's great that you claim that you rescued a couple of guys, and obviously that's extremely valuable. But like you were saying, that's expected that that is going to happen. And they just threw away hundreds of millions of dollars in assets and made the US look completely ridiculous in the process. And we have that as kind of the state of the war in Iran. I know President Trump is saying plenty on social media and threatening that he's going to rain down a spree of war crimes if Iran doesn't agree to a deal by Tuesday. We'll see what he says today, because I think the latest is he's claiming that there's quote unquote been some progress made there, as he does every Monday when the stock market opens back up, and he's got to really get things rolling. But as all of that is happening, you also have this other very important front of the war over in Lebanon, where you have Israel initially claiming that they were going to disarm Hezbollah. Now you have reports from Israeli media claiming that, well, they've actually kind of rolled that back to just creating some buffer zones. Now that is their goal, going up to the Litani River. So how do you see what Hezbollah has been able to accomplish as Israel is continuing on with its own spree of war crimes targeting civilians and journalists and paramedics in the region?
Well, it's very typical of the Israelis that they're going after civilian targets. And so that's what we see when they enter into villages in the south of Lebanon. They release the footage themselves. They want to brag about it. It's not even something that they seek to hide at this point. They are destroying the whole village. They'll plant explosives in homes throughout the village and detonate them. They've openly said that they want to seize territory in southern Lebanon. Now, they're saying that we just want to create a buffer zone, and that perhaps that buffer zone will go up to the Litani River. This is what they're saying. But then you're ethnically cleansing all those people from their homes if you don't allow them back. And that's why they have been destroying all of these civilian bridges. They claim that they're destroying those bridges to stop Hezbollah. They know well that Hezbollah is already in the south and is well supplied and is capable of fighting them. And that's what we see on the ground. Hezbollah has hit over 130 Israeli tanks and dozens of other military vehicles. They've carried out what's going on for around 1,400 operations against the Israelis, both in South Lebanon and in northern occupied Palestine. They're giving the Israelis a massive beating. They really are. They're making them fall back from their positions. You know, there are some cases of the Israeli commanders simply fleeing their positions and running away from them, disobeying orders. You know, you've got the family members of Israeli soldiers that have been deployed into southern Lebanon, writing letters to the senior leadership, begging them to pull their kids out of South Lebanon. This is not a confident Israeli military. It's not a competent Israeli military. It's not a capable Israeli military. And so again, because they're taking a beating from Hezbollah, which are using the likes of the Elmas, ATGM systems, which were reverse engineered versions of the Israeli Spike top attack anti-tank missiles and FPV drones. They're destroying their tanks. And this is something that is really bothering the Israelis, because the Israelis don't like to fight outside of their military vehicles. What the Israelis like to do is they hide themselves in these military vehicles, and they head forward towards a destination that they seek to invade. And then what they do is, with air cover, they set themselves up in civilian homes. They use the civilian homes as military bases. They do not have infantry surrounding their tanks. They don't do this. And by the way, this is something that you're supposed to do. But the Israelis use the tanks as a shield because they're scared to fight on the ground. And the reason why it bothers them so much what's going on in Lebanon, that Hezbollah are using the FPV drones and these anti-tank guided missiles, is that in Gaza they did the same thing, and they were successful in Gaza at staying in their military vehicles and just hoping that a Yasin 105 tandem warhead wouldn't hit their tanks and armored personnel carriers, or if they did, they would just be injured and they wouldn't be killed, because in Gaza they don't have sophisticated weapons. The weapons that they had access to in the Gaza Strip are all made underground by themselves. And so they were capable of pulling off this strategy in Gaza. And you'll note that in the Gaza Strip, over 2 years of warfare, where are the videos of the Israeli military directly clashing with Palestinian fighters? All the videos are from the Palestinian side. It's the Palestinians ambushing the Israelis. It's the Palestinians who are jumping out of nowhere, scaling between buildings and engaging in firefights, sniping the Israeli soldiers who have set up in civilian areas, inside of civilian homes, taking out their tanks and pulling off these daring missions to plant explosive devices on their military vehicles. There's nothing from the Israeli side, bar a few special forces operations, which they pulled off here and there, but there's nothing else. And they were supposed to have been at war with Hamas. And yet, again, in Gaza, they never actually bothered to target Hamas, because it wasn't Hamas that they were fighting, it's the civilian population. And similarly, inside of South Lebanon and in all of Lebanon, they are targeting the civilian population. That is their tactic in war. Their tactic is to use insane firepower and use their air superiority, which they do have air superiority. Nobody is denying this. They have sophisticated capabilities, using these capabilities to terrorize the civilian population into submission, to ethnically cleanse the population. The Gaza strategy is the South Lebanon strategy. There's no difference. The only difference is Hezbollah is more capable than the Palestinian groups is. Hezbollah is battering them on the ground. And now they don't know what to do because they can't really advance in the way that they want to advance. In Gaza, they can advance into Gaza City. They can reach Gaza City. They will get ambushed, but they can get there. You know, getting to the Litani River and occupying all of South Lebanon is not what it used to be for them in 1982, where they could just roll into Beirut. It doesn't take them very long, and you know they can mass murder 20,000 people, and there's going to be absolutely nothing the other side can do about it, and there's going to be no repercussions. In Lebanon, there are repercussions, and Hezbollah has been putting up a fight which has shocked everyone. I mean, I've been writing about this for 15 months and telling lots of people Hezbollah is going to come back, and they're waiting for the opportune moment, and they will have to engage in a war alongside the Iranians. And a lot of the time, I copped a lot of criticism for that because people were telling me, no, Hezbollah is weak. It can't get its weapons through Syria. And I was saying, watch, just watch what's going to happen. And this is exactly what has happened. Because again, the Israelis, they fall for their own propaganda. Because I think to an extent, they believe that they really did damage Hezbollah to a point where it wasn't going to be as capable as it was before. But the reality is that this battle on the ground that Hezbollah is waging is way more effective than it was in 2024 when they did take blows. So they're taking a real beating on the ground in Lebanon right now.
Yeah, it's incredible to watch exactly as you're describing it, right? Because Israel has gotten this false sense of confidence when I guess when you're beating up on the Palestinians, when you're committing an all-out genocide against, again, like you were saying, civilians, right? A civilian population that is not really able to fully fight back, has nothing like the weapons that you do. And then you think, oh, we've got this, right? Look what we did to Gaza. Look how much terror we unleashed on the Palestinians. Oh, we'll just do that to the Lebanese civilians here. And it's not working out like they wanted it to. And we have, you know, Donald Trump over here when he's claiming that, oh, Tuesday is going to be power plant day and bridge day. Like he's bragging about war crimes that he's planning to commit, targeting the Iranian civilian population, because those are the people who would stand to be the most impacted by the attacks that Trump is trying to carry out. And it's like this entire mindset coming from the US and Israel. I really hope that the rest of the world is paying attention to where they stand and then where the axis of resistance stands, because for the first time, we are watching these coordinated attacks carried out coming from Iran, coming from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now coming from Ansar Allah in Yemen. And I know that a lot of people have been waiting and watching to see how Yemen would get involved in this fight. So how do you see the current state of the axis of resistance and kind of what they are carrying out now and how it is playing an overall role in making sure that they continue this war and really teach a lesson to the Americans and the Zionists here?
Well, the entrance of Ansar Allah from Yemen into the war indicates that the Israeli air defense systems have been effectively crippled. And there's a reason why they waited this long, because Ansar Allah does not have the kinds of sophisticated ballistic missiles and drones as sophisticated as the Iranians do. And so the Iranian missiles and the Iranian drones are more effective. And by the way, the drones is something that we don't actually hear a lot about, because Iran is carrying out around the clock drone operations against the Israelis, and yet the Israelis never talk about it. And the reason why is because the censorship is so extreme that they only ever admit when there's these missiles which are flying in the sky, which everyone can see, and they have to admit are incoming. You know, when it's visible, when there's video of it, then they admit it. But when it comes to the Iranian drones and what they're doing, we hear nothing about it. I mean, I haven't seen one Israeli report which admits what the Iranian drones have done. And Iran has fired hundreds of drones. So where have these drones gone? Has every single drone been knocked out of the sky? That doesn't seem plausible, because Ansar Allah is now sending their drones, and they are launching these coordinated attacks along with the Iranians and Hezbollah from Lebanon. And Ansar Allah's drones managed to penetrate deep into southern occupied Palestine. And if you watch the Hezbollah drones, again, these are not as sophisticated as Iran's drones are. And yet there's videos of Hezbollah's drones flying right past multiple Israeli attack helicopters, which are deployed to try and shoot them down, because the Iron Dome doesn't work to shoot them down. So how is it that we don't hear anything about these drone operations and what they're actually doing? Because Israel covers it up. That's the case. Israel is covering up basically everything. And, you know, when some, facts do emerge and some videos and photos emerge, then they have to start admitting things. But it's an extremely ridiculous propaganda strategy, because if you look at the Israeli casualty numbers, they admit the amount of injured Israelis that there are. There's around double the amount of Israelis injured than there is in Lebanon. And now in Lebanon, right now, the death toll sits around 1,400, but the Israeli death toll is around 20. How does that work? And this is including on all fronts, everything that has happened so far. Only 20 odd deaths, 10 in Lebanon, around there, that they're admitting. 10 soldiers, really? This whole time. We've seen on video evidence that more have been killed than this with certain hits, or at least large amounts have been injured. And it's just ridiculous, the propaganda. But the coordination of the fronts is something that is very important, because like I just said, the Ansar Allah now have better chances of their missiles actually hitting their targets and their drones hitting their targets, because the Israeli air defenses are depleted to a large extent, and they're having to hold their air defenses in reserve, certain systems in reserve to defend very specific targets. But, you know, there's a lot of propaganda about how good these air defenses are to begin with. I mean, with the Gaza Strip, Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the PFLP used to fire these rockets all the time at the Israelis. And they found that the strategy to overcome the Iron Dome, and the Iron Dome, by the way, cannot shoot down ballistic missiles. This is something nonsense. They have the David Sling system, the Arrow systems, and then THAAD, which intercepts ballistic missiles. When you see Iron Dome fired up, I mean, it might, if it's lucky, get one of those little sub-munitions which bursts out of the Iranian missiles which are coming down, perhaps, if it's really lucky. But the Iron Dome is really a fireworks show at that point when those missiles are coming down. It's not shooting down them. The Iron Dome, we used to see videos of it all the time, and the Israelis would claim a 95% interception rate with Hamas rockets. And Hamas, you could see the videos of it, because the Hamas rockets are very obvious when they're first fired. And then, there's a trail of smoke behind them. And you would see them bypass the Iron Dome, and it would be missing them. And these are rockets fired on a fixed trajectory, and they could still fire them into Tel Aviv. And again, they weren't guided, so they were just full in random areas a lot of the time. Right? They were not sophisticated weapons, and yet the Iron Dome would fail against them. But now you still have people, the Iron Dome shot down, somehow these Iranian ballistic missiles. It's ridiculous. But the coordination between the fronts, to sort of get back to that, Yemen can play a number of vital roles here. And one of them is that it can impose a lot of economic pain, especially on Europe. Also, even if Egypt was wanting to involve itself to a certain extent here, because of its ability to lock down the Red Sea. And if it really wanted to, it could lock down the Suez Canal. It could do that. So Yemen entering at this point is very important. And the fact that they held back for so long shows that there is a clearly coordinated strategy, that every front knows what it's doing. It knows when to hatch certain plots against the enemy. And even when it comes to the potential entrance of into the war by the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia against Iran, Ansar Allah could prove very effective, perhaps even on the ground. And Saudi Arabia knows that. Saudi Arabia knows that very well, and the UAE knows that too, because Ansar Allah have hit both the UAE and Saudi Arabia and dealt blows to them in the past, and their capabilities have increased over the years. So I think their entrance into the war is significant in that it's a deterrent factor, but also it shows that the Israeli air defense system is waning. It's very weak at this point. And we are seeing that from more of the sort of leaked footage and photos coming out from the Israeli side, that they're not shooting down the majority of these Iranian ballistic missiles. They're just not. I mean, it's ridiculous to suggest so at this point. At the start, perhaps they were catching and knocking some of them off target. But if you look at all the research done, even into the U.S. Patriot systems and into Israeli Iron Dome in the past, when it's actually studied, the rate of interception is in the single digits normally. So it's not all that effective. Now, that being said, because there are multiple systems which were set up to protect the Israelis, I do believe it was higher than the single digits, the percentage of missiles that were being shot down before, much higher than the single digits. But that, again, the propaganda surrounding these air defense systems is ridiculous. Like, to give another example, to sort of finish this point on, the Israelis developed what they called the Iron Beam system, right? And this is a laser system. And for years, they were advertising this and talking about not only could it take down rockets and ballistic missiles, but it could take down mortar fire and anti-tank guided munitions. It could take down everything. And they tested it last year and they said it was successful, and yet it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I was saying this for years as they were developing it, because they tried to use it in Gaza when, again, they were testing it. It was in its early phases, and it couldn't shoot down a balloon with a flaming object, because during the Great Return marches in 2018, Palestinians used to do this. They put something on fire attached to a balloon, and it would land on the Israeli side. That was their, form of resistance back then. And the Israeli soldiers came out instead and just started shooting at the balloons. So, these defense systems are overblown. It's because they want to sell them around the world. It's a big industry. It's part of the military-industrial complex. And so, there's a lot of people, they just overhype these systems and they believe the nonsense about them. So yeah, there is there's a lot to say about Israel and its alleged, capabilities.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because I think about how Trump came into office and he's like, oh, we've got to build the Golden Dome, right? Because the idea is that the Iron Dome is the greatest thing ever. Therefore, the US needs to have a version of it, even though I'm looking at him and I'm going, if we get to the point where, and I don't know how they think that they're going to stop a ballistic missile, full on, nuclear weapon, but if we get to that point where something like that is headed to the US homeland, like it's over. We've already crossed the threshold, right? This idea that the US could have some sort of air defense to ever stop that is just insane to me. But like you were saying, Israel they sell their capabilities all around the world. And a lot of countries are scared of Israel and to a certain extent have kind of walked that tightrope, with this ongoing genocide that Israel is carrying out against the Palestinians, because it's like they don't want to do too much to piss off Israel. And it's all a facade from Israel at the end of the day. Now you have these coordinated attacks targeting them. And like you were saying, there's only so much that they can do about it. And so going into the last thing I wanted to bring up is really just where we're headed in the week to come. I know that we've got, I was going to say 24 hours. I believe Trump has now extended his own deadline once again to 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. He's declaring that Iran has to make a deal by then, or else he's going to rain down hell on the Iranian civilians, because of course that's who he's targeting. But what are you keeping an eye on when it comes to the overall war, especially after this debacle that we saw in Iran for the U.S. military over the weekend?
Of course, the Trump administration is always talking about, first we're threatening Iran with sending them back to the Stone Age, but then there's going to be a deal in the next few days. And then again, he's threatening them and giving them deadlines. But now there's a 40-something day temporary ceasefire proposal. And quite frankly, I don't even bother wasting my time looking at the details of these temporary ceasefires and these ridiculous proposals. And the reason why I don't bother looking at the US proposals in any great depth is because they're just not plausible and they're not going to be accepted. And we saw that this morning the Iranians responded and put through 10 points through to the Pakistani mediators and just said, look, not only do we want a permanent ceasefire, not a temporary ceasefire, you're going to do a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and in Lebanon and across the region. You're going to repay us for all of the damage during the war. All US military bases in the Persian Gulf are going to be evacuated. You're going to clear out of the region. There is a new reality imposed in the Strait of Hormuz, and it's ours now. You have nothing to do with it. And a number of other demands as well that they put on the table here. So sanctions being lifted, one of them. So the Iranians are not going to take a ridiculous temporary ceasefire, and it would be against their interest to do so. It would be so naive and stupid for them to do this, because all that's going to happen is the United States is going to restock anti-air munitions, it's going to figure out new strategies, and then it's going to come back to Iran again in maybe a year's time to rain down hell on the civilian population. So I expect the United States will perhaps escalate in some ways. If the US is hesitant to escalate in certain ways, the Israelis will do it for them. There is still a chance that they are going to launch a ground invasion against Iranian islands or send special forces teams. And, although this disaster for them in the pilot rescue mission is objectively a disaster, a costly disaster for them. The whole ordeal was Donald Trump presents it as some heroic victory. And again, I'm sure they're going to make a Hollywood movie out of this, of the nonsense that they produced. So it might actually be encouraging to Donald Trump what just happened, for them actually committing to ground operations. And unfortunately, if it was encouraging, then we might see these ground operations carried out, and it's going to be devastating for the for the U.S. military. And of course, the Israelis don't bother deploying their troops because, again, they can't even deploy them into South Lebanon without them running away and their parents crying to the senior leadership to pull them out. So the Americans have to be sent in to die for Israel on the ground, and that's very possible. So this could escalate in any number of ways, And Iran has a response for everything because, again, Iran has prepared for this very well. And in a way, if the ground forces do go in, this is a gift to Iran because Iran will get that image of victory that they really want for their people. Having the bodies of dead American soldiers or even capturing some American soldiers, both of which are very, very possible if there's a ground operation, that's going to be the image of victory for them. And the U.S. seems to be sleepwalking right into it. Everything the Israelis request of them, the United States does. And there's just no pushback. And this has been a disaster from the start, an utter disaster. And they were defeated, really, on the first day because they didn't really have a strategy. It's just bomb civilian infrastructure. And even if they capture some islands in the Persian Gulf, let's say they do it, it's possible. It's always possible. It's going to be a slaughterhouse for them there. And they're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. They weren't able to stop the Ansarullah blockade of the Red Sea, let alone open the Strait of Hormuz, which is a much narrower space to get through. And Iran has much more sophisticated weapons than Ansarullah in Yemen. So we can expect that, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to die. A lot of civilian targets are going to be targeted in Iran, in Lebanon. The Israelis will continue to bomb Syria and bomb Gaza and kill innocent people because they don't have a real strategy. The strategy is to attack the civilians.
And I think that's got to be the biggest reminder of it all, right? That they are going into this acting as if they're accomplishing something while just continuing to terrorize the civilian population. And in turn, the civilians are going to continue to support the resistance, right? Because that is the natural order of things. They're not going to stand up and go, oh yeah, you know what? We're going to support the people that have been bombing us and that are threatening to bomb us back into the Stone Ages. And it just goes to show the clear desperation of the US and the Israelis here as they get into another week of this illegal war of aggression. I always appreciate you taking the time to join me to break down all of the latest here. Robert and Lakesh, a journalist, documentary
or even what the trouble is. So instead, they're just making up stuff as they go along. Let us chat. So the big story, I guess, there's two big stories. One being the narrative about well over 100 planes, like 140 or 170 planes, however many it was that were used supposedly to rescue a pilot. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And the other, of course, Trump with another one of his deadlines. Let us start with the pilot story. Okay, so what happened? Let's lead up to it. Apparently, this back a little bit. There we go. Apparently, over the last week to 2 weeks, the discussion has been boots on the ground, right? And of course, they're definitely going to do boots on the ground. But the only question is it going to be some massive thing? Well, it's like they got a couple of thousand troops. So a massive thing ain't going to happen. They're not going to be like marching columns of tanks across the mountains of Iran, obviously. So keep in mind, the discussion was what? Boots on the ground. And as people came to realize that there wasn't enough troops to do any kind of a major ground incursion, it became the conversation switched to some kind of a special ops mission that had a limited number of soldiers. And of course it was, well, maybe they'll go to Isfahan or Natanz or wherever the heck, right? And they will try to take one of these nuclear sites with nuclear material. And then I said, well, maybe they'll try to go to one of these missile cities and do an incursion into the missile cities and attack it and go inside and take it apart, something that was going to be a smaller move, a special operations move. So that was the discussion. And what happened? So keep in mind now something. So the conversation had distilled down to an attack by a small number of special operations forces on a specific location. Okay. And then the timeline began to arise. It became to come into focus, shall we say, rather than arise. And the timeline was the Easter weekend. Okay. So that's the setup here. The setup is the discussion was a special operations mission on Easter weekend. It was the setup. And it kind of reminded me, to be quite frank, of what, if this thing is what it appears to be, it kind of makes you think of Ukraine, the so-called counteroffensive, where they like told us for months, yes, there's going to be a counteroffensive, and this is where it's going to be. And there's going to be a counteroffensive, and this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to work, and this is the direction it's coming from, this is the time. And they just set it all up, and the Russians were like, well, thank you very much. Are you sure it's coming from that direction? They set up minefield, they set up everything. These poor schlubs walk right into the minefield, walk right into death. Okay? So, and I don't know why I can't get...
Simpler stores. Get in and out quick. It's an Aldi thing.
This is weird. I cannot get Rockfin to work at all. My Rockfin is dead. It just says the stream is temporarily unavailable. Please check back in a moment. So I'm getting nothing. I'm getting zilcho. I'm getting bupkis out of Rockfin, and I don't know why. Anyway, so so that's what we had. We had a narrative set up for just that. Okay, so over the course of the Easter weekend, when we were told there may be some kind of a special operations grounds incursion, what do you know? We hear that there's a pilot down, and then we hear that there's a mission out to get the pilot, and we hear that the mission is involving 150, 40, 50, 60 planes, and that then we hear that there were big firefights, and according to the Iranians, at least 100 special ops soldiers. Then we're hearing various numbers of aircraft that were lost, right? We're hearing at least two C-130s with various stories. They were shot down, they were blown up on the ground, whatever the case may be. Numbers of helicopters taken out, right? And it's like, okay. And we're supposed to believe that's about going to get a pilot. I'm sorry. There are those who may say, well, and there was a part of this discussion was, well, the pilot was a high-ranking guy, so therefore, you know, they needed to put forth a lot of resources to get this guy. He was high-ranking. They were really going to go all out to get him, right? But even that didn't make sense because he was a much higher-ranking officer than would normally simply be the navigator on a plane, right? So it's like, okay, the navigator, I'm supposed to believe the navigator on the plane was a really, really high-ranking person. And then he had a broken ankle and or leg, and he wandered 5 to 10 miles and climbed the mountain a couple of 1,000 feet with a broken ankle and or leg. And you listen to the story and you're like, none of this makes sense. And 144 planes, I'm supposed to believe. Doesn't make sense. That is not the search and rescue team that goes out for a down pilot. So we also find out that this location, keep in mind something, in a country the size of Western Europe, this coincidentally happens to be like 25 miles from a nuclear site. So I think we really have to assume at this point, this is my assumption. You assume what you want. You can think it was a down pilot if you want to, and you may be right. My belief is it is what we were told it was going to be. I mean, what do they have to do? Hey, you know what? I'll be coming by tomorrow at 4 o'clock in a red Mustang. And a guy comes by at 4 o'clock in a red Mustang. Gee, I wonder if it's Garland. Well, didn't he say he was coming by at 4 o'clock in a red Mustang? Yeah, probably Garland, right? They tell you on the weekend of Easter weekend, they're going to do a special op and ground incursion, and there's some kind of what appears to be a ground incursion and special op on Easter weekend. It is what it looks like. If it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? So what we see is, being that the Trump administration was involved in it, we would have to guess that it was a debacle, because everything they do is a debacle. So bottom line is, this goes down. There's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of planes left on the ground. We are told, as always, keep in mind something. This war has been going on for now 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever. 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and we've lost 13 people, right? Excuse me, 13 people we've lost. So if you believe that, then you believe that then the aircraft carrier had a laundry room fire, and that this is 150 planes searching for a downed pilot. None of these stories make sense. Okay. So, and we didn't, now, as Trump said, remember, no injuries. Isn't it weird? 2 planes blown to hell and a bunch of other planes. Now we had 2 C-130s down. My understanding is somewhere around 2 F-18s, an A-10, and numerous helicopters, but we lost nobody. We never lose anybody. But keep in mind something. The Iranians now, as I understand the latest numbers, which how do they keep increasing? I don't know after the fact, but the number, in like 2 days of protests, the Iranians killed 40,000 civilians in 2 days of protest, 3 days, whatever it was, 40,000 civilians. We were in an all-out war for 4 or 5 weeks and we lost 13 people. That's how much sense that makes. I can count, and that doesn't seem to add up. The math ain't mathin', as they say. And by the way, once again, no injuries again. Firefights, planes down, helicopters blown, no injuries, no deaths. Apparently the Iranians have like pictures of an airplane with like burned out bodies and skulls in it, but nobody died. I guess we planted those in there or something, right? The Iranians, that's AI, whatever, right? We didn't lose anybody. That's it. That's what the Trump administration's position. I guess those guys and girls or whoever who die just don't count. I mean, I don't know, but I guess they'll tell their families, look, it's part of our top secret mission. If they even tell their families, who knows? Anyway, so that's where we are. We've had a top secret mission that we were told about for weeks before it happened. It seems to have flopped like a massive debacle. And what did the Trump team do? They tell you how successful it was. That's what they can do. Isn't that really a metaphor for this entire war? They have a press conference. How's the war going? We're crushing them. We're blowing them to smithereens. We're tearing them up. This press conference, this particular debacle that was portrayed as some kind of a great victory, is a perfect metaphor for the war. It is a debacle. It is a disaster being portrayed as a victory. All they can do is repackage a pile of crap as a shiny new diamond ring. That's all they can do, is tell you things are going well. How's things going? Man, great. How's the war going? Oh, are you kidding me? We're winning hands down, obliterating them. Look, Iran, their air force is gone. Their navy's gone. Their air defense system is gone. They got nothing. It's over. Why are we even bothering with this? Why don't we just walk away and just let him collapse? It's absurd. That's what our country has become. That's what our leadership has become. Go out, start an illegal war, slaughter little girls, back a genocidal lunatic apartheid state, then lose a war every day. Nobody died. Nobody was injured. And oh, by the way, we're winning. We're really winning. That's where we are, people. The economy, did I mention the economy is going great? Short-term pain for long-term gain. That rhymes, doesn't it? Hey, how great is that? We have a slogan that rhymes. Hey, I can't pay my bills. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Hey, I'm going out of business because I can't afford diesel fuel for my trucks. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Everybody, all together, boys and girls, let's see it. Short-term pain, long-term gain. What's the short-term pain? The war. What's the long-term gain? Shut up. That's what it is. It's a slogan. And you know what? Pete Hegseth today at the press conference literally said, peace through strength is not, and it's not a slogan. And I thought, well, it's exactly a slogan. It's not a slogan. Peace through strength is in fact a slogan. Whether or not you say it's a justifiable slogan, which is garbage, it is exactly a slogan. Peace through strength is not a slogan. It's a reality. So he just gets on. And so now I can't even watch these press conferences anymore. That's the game now. We are involved in a military debacle. There's a laundry room fire. Planes are blown up on the ground. Bodies strewn about everywhere. Caskets coming in. Oh, by the way, we're not allowed to see the caskets anymore. That's it. No more cameras there. You don't need them because nobody dies or gets injured. Right? We don't need, what do we need cameras in Delaware to see the bodies coming forward? There's only been 13. There's no bodies. And so we get to watch cheerleading fests designed and butt kissing cheerleading fests. I didn't watch them. And I probably should, because this is what I do every day, but I can't stand it. I'm going to watch Donald Trump tell us how we obliterated Iran, and Iran better do what we want or else, number one. And then I got to watch these butt kissers come on. Nobody has shown the courage like our President Trump. All right, next, butt kisser. Okay, your turn, Ratcliffe. President Trump's great, and he did what no other human being could ever do. He's the greatest ever, ever, ever. Thank you, butt kisser. Your turn, next. Okay, Pete Hegseth again. Oh, that Trump is wonderful. Oh, I love that man. My heart bleeds for Donald Trump. I go to sleep every night, and all I think about is how wonderful Trump is. That's all they're doing. They're passing a baton from each other to see who can brown nose and butt kiss the loudest. I hate brown nosers and I hate butt kissers. And this is the brown nosiness, butt kissingest administration that this world has ever seen. It is absolutely revolting. It is stomach turning to watch men prostrate themselves, to watch grown men humiliate and degrade themselves at the altar of this guy. Every day. I mean, and you're you know, here's what kills me. Hegseth and these slumps. You're playing the tough guy role, but you're nothing but a butt kisser. You're nothing but a brown nose. We're tough. I can bench 300 pounds. Look at me. We're the baddest. We're the baddest ever. I'm the toughest ever. Okay. You got anything else to say, Pete? Yeah, this is my boss. I love him. He's very nice. He treats me good. Thank you, boss. Yes, master. Yes, master. He's the opposite of a man. These people are the opposite of strong. They claim to be strong. Strong people don't kiss ass like that night and day. Strong people, you're not going to see some strong guy. He's going to salute the president. Yeah, we've got General so-and-so, Nixon. General Nixon, what do you have to say? I'm here reporting for duty. Sir, what do you think of the president? He is the president of the United States. And I answered him, sir, you would expect something like that. You wouldn't expect him to get down. Let me kiss all over his little feeties. Ooh, somebody, what do you want to do, General Nixon? Bring me a shoe shine kit so I can shine his shoe. That's all Pete Hegseth needs. He needs a shoe shine kit. You know what? Him and Ratcliffe, the whole group of them, they need shoe shine kits. So when Donald Trump is giving his speeches, is rambling incoherently and revealing top secret things that they don't want anybody to know, when he's doing that, they should be shining his shoes, one on the left, one on the right. Spit shine those shoes. That's what they should do, because they are degrading and humiliating themselves, their communities, their families. It's sickening. Anyway, so that's where we are. Now, let us move on to this so-called, what does he want to call it? Ultimatum? Ultimatum? Okay. So Trump uses this word, deal. Deal. Let me do this. I'm going to look up the word deal. D-E-A-L. Definition. Deal. Let's see. To engage in bargaining. So another word for deal would be a bargain. There we go. That's another, that's good. Let's see, because I want to see, why do I say that? An agreement between parties settling what each gives or receives in a transaction between them, or what course of action or policy each pursues in respect to the other, right? A transaction, right? An agreement, that's a deal. So an agreement means we agree that this is in the best interest of everybody. Okay, that's a deal. Trump had something, the art of the deal, his books, right? So it's, how do you make a deal? I want a deal, a bargain. So here's what the way Trump claims to make a deal. I'm going to write down a set of demands and I'm going to give them to you, right? Demands. Here's the standards. Here's the parameters for our bargain, for our transaction. Okay, let me look at them. I don't like them. They don't work for me. You better take those. Nah, they don't work for me. I'm going to give you an alternative set of deals and a set of parameters, demands, whatever you want to call it. So I got your demands. I'm going to write down mine and give them to you. I want you to read them. No, I'm not reading your demands. Why? I've already given you mine. Okay, well, read mine. And I thought we were working on a bargain. No, we're not. A transaction. No, we're not. Take the offer that I've given you. I don't want to. Then I'll kill you. I'll blow everything you have up. I'll blow up your country. I'll murder your people. I'll destroy everything. I'll crush you if you don't take this set of demands that I made.
I can't keep track of all my subscriptions, but my BFF Experian can. And
Isn't it supposed to be an agreement? Isn't a deal, a bargain, a transaction, things like that? Aren't we supposed to have an agreement? If let me ask you this. You're standing on the street and old Garland walks up behind you and sticks a gun in your back. Says, give me your wallet or I'll kill you. And you give me the wallet. And I say, hey, that was a good deal. That was a bargain. But what really was the bargain? The bargain was, do what I tell you or I'll kill you. That's not an agreement. That's not a bargain. First of all, here's the problem in contract law, right? If I sign a contract under duress, I can argue in court that it's not a valid signature, right? Sign it or I'll kill you. I don't want to go along with that contract. Dude, you better sign it. Okay, I signed it. Then I leave. I got Garland's signature. I can contest that signature. And I can say it was signed under duress. No, it was not voluntary. It was only signed because he had a gun to my head. And at that time, if I didn't, he'd kill me. So no, it wasn't. It's not a valid signature. It was signed under duress, right? So my point being, under duress is not an agreement. It's not a legal agreement. It is a forced action. I had a gun in his head and said, sign that. So Trump, what he's saying is this. I want what I'm going to call a bargain, but you have to take it under duress. Here, I've set forth a bargain for you to sign, but I don't want to sign it. But if you don't sign it, I'll kill you. I still don't want to sign it, but I'll kill you. So you better sign it. And then after you sign it, I'm going to say, man, I sure am good at getting a bargain. I wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. I got a deal. How'd you get the deal? I told the guy, take my offer, I'll kill you. Now, there is a fundamental problem when you're dealing with Iran. And Russia's the same thing, Ukraine. The person already feels like you kill them. They got nothing to lose. So what happens now? What happens now is you say to Iran, Iran, here's an offer. And Iran says, I'm not taking that offer. And you say, but if you don't, I'll do X. Okay? So now, tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Donald Trump says, I'm going to do X. And Iran says, you got to do X then, brother, because I'm not taking your deal. Whatever it is you claim. Now, keep in mind something. Iran has already designated a bank of targets. And they've said, look, you can probably hit our whatevers. Fair enough. You got lots of missiles and all kinds of things, and you can get some missiles through. We may shoot some of them down, but you can hit our stuff. Okay. All right. You can hit our power plants, our infrastructure, things like that. Here's a list of power plants and infrastructure throughout the region, because we can do it too. You can do it. We can do it. So you already know if our infrastructure goes, the whole region goes, and that includes Israel. It's going to be smoked. So Wednesday morning when you wake up, what do you think the stock market's going to look like? When people realize that we have killed the infrastructure in the entire region, that they're going to be a decade before they can get this region going back again, if they're lucky, after the war is over, if they're lucky, that we've made most of this region uninhabitable, that everybody with money's leaving. By the way, the whole concept of oil being used, coming from the Persian, coming from the Middle East to keep the world's industry going, that's over. Western economies ain't what they used to be, brother. They ain't what they used to be. So you hit us Tuesday night, within 24 hours, we're gonna hit everybody else. And that's that. And you know we'll do it, and you know we can. Just like we know you will, and we know you can. That's what's going to happen afterwards. Now, here's my question to old Trumpy, if you think about it. Why are you doing that, Donald Trump? Because you want Iran to, quote, take the deal. You want to coerce them into doing something. And if they don't, you're going to play your hand. Okay, all right. If I'm Iran, I say, you got to play your hand. And after you played your hand, you're still not going to have what you want. But you're going to have other problems that you didn't have before, but you're still not getting it. Right? I've always said, if somebody says, we've got compromising video on you, Garland, in Tijuana with, I don't know, a donkey, whatever the hell, I don't know, right? Compromise on you from the Epstein, when those times you visited the Epstein Ranch, Garland, we got you. Okay. And either you do what we tell you to do, or we're going to release the video. I'd have to say, release the videos. I'd say, yeah, you kind of got me, don't you? Yeah. And if I don't do what you tell me, you're going to release the videos, right? Yes, we're going to release the videos, Garland, if you don't do what we tell you. So the videos are leverage, aren't they? Yeah, we got leverage on you.
Meet our chief tough officer. He does extremely tough tests.
So when a product survives.
Go ahead and release the videos. I got to say that. But Garland, you'll be destroyed. Man, destroyed is a relative term. But I'll put it to you like this. If I give you what you want, you don't have to release the videos. And the videos were very good leverage. But on the other hand, you went through all the trouble of getting your hands on it, recording those videos to use them for leverage. And if you release them, I get embarrassed. But you still don't get what you want. So they weren't leverage, were they? It was just something to embarrass me. Either way, go ahead and release them. Then I'll be embarrassed. Fair enough. I'll have to make up an excuse. I have to tell everybody I shouldn't have been in Tijuana doing whatever you got me on videotape doing. But you don't get what you want. And you wasted your time. So that's your ace. Play it. That's what you got. Lay it on the table and then walk away, get out of my life, and don't come back. Because you've played what you had and it didn't get you anything. So play your hand. If somebody threatened me with something like that, I'd say you got to go public with it, because I ain't going to get you what you want. Now, you'll have the satisfaction of saying you're embarrassed. I embarrassed Garland, but did you get what you wanted from Garland? Nah, he wouldn't bid. It wasn't leverage. It was all the money and time you spent so you could get me to do something, and you didn't get it. So play your hand. Here's my point. So Trump is saying to Iran, I want you to do X. And Iran says, no. If you don't do X, then I'll do Y. They can say, you can do Y. Yeah, but I still ain't doing X. So go ahead, play your hand, Trump. Then what you going to do? We're going to obliterate you Tuesday night. Okay, and you're not going to have what you want. And we're going to obliterate everybody Tuesday night too. Okay, fair enough. Then what you going to do Wednesday morning? You're going to be in the same boat you were only you're going to have some new problems that you didn't have before. You got to wake up the next morning and look at the markets. We destroyed the economies of all of the Middle East. It's uninhabitable. Countries like Saudi Arabia, they get 90% of their drinking water and their potable water from desalination plants. They ain't inhabitable anymore. They got no more desalination plants. If they had them, they wouldn't have electricity to run them anyway. They got no power. So nobody has power. Nobody throughout the region. How you think the market's going to react, by the way? Not good, probably. Then what are you going to do? In Iran, we're still here. You're still at war. We're still firing at you. And you've just wiped out all of the energy in the region, and you got nothing out of it. The answer's still no. What you going to come back with tomorrow? Well, you better do it, or I'll do Y. I did X tonight. You can do Y. Keep going. You're going to have more problems. I ain't doing it, ever. That's where Iran is. Think about this. This is just another iteration of shock and awe. How did this thing start? It started by Trump saying, we're offering you a deal, the same deal. You're going to have to get rid of your ballistic missiles, limit the range of them, do this, that, zero enrichment, blah, blah, blah. Ron says, no. If you don't, we'll attack you so hard like you've never been attacked before. Okay. Attack us. You attacked them. But you still didn't get what you want. Right? You threatened. Take the deal I'm offering or else. And Iran said, or else. Do it. That's your only option because the answer is no. Darn. We'll shock and awe you. Okay, we'll shock and awe. So you shock and awe them and you got nothing. Now what are you doing? All right, darn, it didn't work when we told them take a deal and we'd shock and awe them. Okay, watch this. Iran, you better take a deal. What if we don't? We'll shock and awe you. And Iran's like, I think we've been down that road before. Well, we're going down it again. So you better do what we're telling you to do or else. Iran's like, yeah, well, we're giving you the same answer. How about Russia? You remember this? Russia, you better take a ceasefire. Russia's like, root causes? Root causes. No ceasefire. You better take it, Russia, because if you don't, 500% back breaking, belly aching, rattlesnaking tariffs on everybody that buys oil from you. Russia's like, yeah, whatever. You can do what you got to do. The answer is no. We'll only address the root causes. You better, or else we'll do all kind of stuff, Russia. You can do all kind of stuff, but we ain't going to stop fighting. We want a ceasefire, Russia. No ceasefires. Oh, darn. Okay, we got a better plan. Hold on, I'm going to huddle with the NATO. Macron, Starmer, Mertz, what do you think? Ceasefire? All right, we've come up with a plan. Russia, take a ceasefire. No! We have a plan for that. Time out. Starmer, ceasefire. Macron. Okay, in that case, we think we'll settle for a ceasefire then. Russia's like, no ceasefires. And they're like, crap. We don't know what to do. Maybe we'll huddle and come back and tell you we need a ceasefire again. Russia's like, don't bother. That's where it is. They just come back to Russia every few weeks and tell them they want a ceasefire, and Russia says, no. Oh, okay, then you have to give Ukraine their land back. No. Ceasefire? No. Land back? No. No, no, no. Stop asking us the same damn questions over and over again. The answer's still going to be no. America just does that, what we do, I guess. That's what we did with Ukraine. Over and over, ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. It's time for a ceasefire. We'll do this, and then we'll have there'll be what they say, security guarantees and a ceasefire. No, instead we want to do a ceasefire and security guarantees. The same thing over and over. Russia's like, la la la. I can't hear you. And they just continue to smash Ukraine. They got time. And now it's the exact same thing with Iran. Iran, you've got to stop doing this, no enrichment, get rid of limited your ballistic missiles. And they're like, no, well, if you don't, then we'll shock and awe you. Okay. Shock and awe. Ha ha ha. We got you. And Iran's like, yeah, okay, you got us. We're going to blow the hell out of everything. Oh, okay. Darn, it's been 30 days and we can't get out. I got a plan. Brand new one that nobody could ever have guessed we were going to do. This is totally different and unique. Okay, here we go. Iran, you better take the deal by Wednesday night or we're going to shock and awe you again. Or I was like, okay, well, we're going to shock and awe you right back. Do what you got to do, bro. And so now Trump is, as always, painted into a corner because all Trump does over and over and over, it's not Trump, this is the nature of the U.S. empire. Do what I tell you to do. No. If you don't, I will punish you. You know, it demonstrates a mentality, a way of viewing the world that says, A, I have the right to order others around. Number two, if they don't do what I want, I have the right to punish them, right? And lastly, they don't have a right to an opinion. You do what I tell you to do, or I punish you. And you don't have a right to an opinion. You just take it. And if you say, well, no, well, then I'll blow you up and I'll crush you. Okay, well, you're gonna have to blow us up. And that's what happens eventually. When you threaten and threaten and threaten, eventually people are going to say, you know what, you're gonna have to carry out with those threats. That's what all Russia and Iran are both doing. Okay, you're gonna have to carry out those threats. No more. We're not just gonna jump around because you said it. You're gonna have to carry them out. And if you do, the pain will be real and the pain will be immediate. So whatever. And so now they're facing dueling debacles, right? The mother and father of all debacles are upon them. And now Trump has backed himself into another corner. Now, in theory, one could argue that Trump may carry it out tomorrow. He may. I doubt it very seriously. Why? Because you are what your record says you are. And Trump has over and over, has repeatedly made these kinds of threats to Russia and now to Iran. And then he just says something like, I don't remember saying that. We'll give him another day, another 24 hours, another 48 hours, another. Think about this. Trump apparently was saying, yes, they wanted a week, and I told him I'd give him another 2 days. You know what I mean? Dude, you're losing the war. You're losing the war. And you're pretending like you're winning. We're supposed to believe it. Well, Iran came to me, kissing my feet, and they said, dear sir, Mr. Trump, will you please give us a couple more days? And I said, you know, I'm feeling benevolent. I'm feeling good. I just had a happy meal. Tell you what I'll do. I wasn't going to do this, but I give you 2 more days. Oh, thank you, Mr. Trump. Thank you for giving us 2 more days. That's what we're supposed to believe. That's Trump's twisted mind saying, I am the boss. I am in charge. I'm the big boss. People come to me and ask me, and I say yes, and I say no. And I tell people to live, and they live, and I tell people to die, and they die, because I am the master in his own mind. But I do not believe that they're calling him saying, can we get 2 more days? I don't think they asked for it. In fact, I think it's the other way around. What's interesting is Trump is saying Iran called him and asked him for an extension for a couple of days. Meanwhile, last week, it was reported even on Sky News that Donald Trump asked for a 2-day ceasefire, and Iran said no. Isn't that interesting? He wants us to believe that Iran asked him for a 2-day ceasefire when it was reported on Sky News that he asked them for a 2-day ceasefire, and they said no. Or he's saying they asked for an extension. He asked for an extension. But yet we're supposed to believe they said no. So now we already know this. What do we know? Iran is not accepting your dictates and your demands. Not going to happen. Just because you don't have the capacity to use to use diplomacy to settle your scores doesn't mean that the other team has to accept brutality and threats. You better do what I tell you to do. No. If you don't, I'll do terrible things. You got to do them, because the answer is no. Either you will speak to me like a human being or don't speak to me. I'll blow up your car. Well, you blow it up then, and I'll blow yours up, and we'll both have blown up cars. But you ain't pushing me around. That's what Trump is. And now I don't think he knows how to deal with that. And generally, what I think we'll see from Trump is the same kind of bluster over and over. You better do it or else. No. What do you do? See, ultimately, when you make these kinds of huge threats, I'm going to do big, terrible things if you don't do what I say. And when the person doesn't even think about it, like, well, let me see, should I? Shouldn't I? Maybe. Let's talk about it. But no, when the person categorically and summarily dismisses your demand, that's what Iran has done. They have unceremoniously dismissed your demands. You have to do this, this, this. And Iran's like, that ain't even, get out of here with that. Not trying to hear it. Well, if you don't, which I'm not, then I'll do terrible things, and I'll do terrible things. So let's match up with terrible things. You need to talk to your allies. They ain't going to be happy. And I still got cards to play. I have not closed down the Bab el-Mandab Strait, the Red Sea. Haven't closed it down yet. So they're holding it down. So if you play your hands, I mean, do they really need to close it down? Come to think of it, if nobody's got electricity and power, what are they going to do? Paddle across it, paddle up and down it? And why does ships from all over the world need to come to that vicinity? There ain't going to be no oil or gas to transport out. At that point, effectively, the Straits of Hormuz is closed because there's nothing to come out of it. So I think we are at a point where, as far as Iran's concerned, time is on their side, number one. And as soon as I think as soon as, if Trump does it, which I don't think he will, then time really ain't on his Trump side. Because if Trump does it, that means the market crashes, which is going to crash, but it crashes faster. You know, at some point, Trump's sitting there staring at a 2008 style economic fall. He's sitting there and people are like, well, how's the jobs report? Oh, we're losing 735,000 jobs a month. What are we going to do, Trump? We're going to pound and beat them and demand even more. Trump just going to keep this up until the midterms? I don't think so. So he's in a situation where he's made a threat, and we shall see whether or not he's able to carry out that threat. I don't think he is, but it's possible. Anything's possible. But if he does, again, he has something that he wants. He's made a threat saying, give me what I want. Because he wants something. He needs this something. Will carrying out his threat get him any closer to this thing that he needs or further away? I interpret it as considerably farther away, and it will create significant new problems as you'll have a very fast reaction in the market. So that's where Trump is. That's the situation he finds himself in, and that's the situation we find ourselves in. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm going to get
Coffee. Follow me.